Chapter 920. Originally, Chu Fengmian wanted to refine the sky crystal directly. However, thinking of Xing Xian's words, Chu Fengmian put the sky crystal into his empty ring. Now that such a large piece of sky crystal had been put away, the palace seemed a little more spacious. Chu Fengmian swept his gaze around and saw a palm-sized tile at the place where the heavenly crystal was just now. What's this? Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with joy and excitement when he saw the palm-sized tile. The Emperor Jar. It's a fragment of the Emperor Jar. Chu Fengmian recognized the palm-sized tile at a glance. It was a fragment of the Emperor Jar. When Chu Fengmian came to the Flame Sky Lake, he had been attracted to the fragment of the Emperor Jar. Now that Chu Fengmian had the fragment of the Emperor Jar in his hand, the fragment must have sensed Chu Fengmian's presence and deliberately attracted him here. I didn't expect to encounter a fragment of the Emperor Jar here. With this one, I've already collected 5 fragments of the Emperor Jar. Chu Fengmian was overjoyed. The Emperor Jar was divided into 9 pieces, and Chu Fengmian now had 4 fragments in his hand. If other warriors obtained the other 5 fragments, the Emperor Jar in Chu Fengmian's hand would be in great danger. It might even be taken away. Therefore, Chu Fengmian had never stopped looking for the fragments of the Emperor Jar. However, the 9 regions was so big that it was not easy to find the fragments of the Emperor Jar. Chu Fengmian did not expect to encounter a fragment of the Emperor Jar in the House of Storms. With the addition of this piece, Chu Fengmian now had a total of 5 fragments of the Emperor Jar. In this way, even if the remaining 4 fragments of the Emperor Jar were obtained by the same person, they would not be a threat to Chu Fengmian. On the other hand, Chu Fengmian had already obtained 5 of the fragments, which was enough to take the initiative. When the time came, he could directly snatch the remaining fragments of the Emperor Jar. When the 9 fragments were combined, it would be enough to reform the Emperor Jar, a true ultimate immortal weapon. Thinking of this, Chu Fengmian did not hesitate. He took a step forward and grabbed the fragment of the Emperor Jar. Without any obstruction, Chu Fengmian grasped the fragment of the Emperor Jar in his hand. Feeling the familiar spiritual energy on it, Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a smile. That's right. This spiritual power was indeed a fragment of the Runhuang Jar. Just like when Chu Fengmian grabbed the Kanglin immortal armor, a memory suddenly appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. This memory should be the memory left by Venerable Kanglin. It was a passage of Venerable Kanglin's words. This item is called the Fragment of the Human Emperor Jar. It's an extreme immortal weapon from the ancient era. In my entire life, I've only obtained 1 fragment of the Human Emperor Jar. Even though it's just 1 fragment, it's still an extreme immortal weapon with boundless power. Senior Immortal Kanglin's words soon disappeared. It seemed that this Emperor Jar was also obtained by Senior Immortal Kanglin by chance back then. Even Master Immortal Kanglin, who was invincible in the 9 regions at that time, had only obtained 1 of the fragments of the Emperor Jar. He couldn't find the rest. It could be seen how difficult it was to find the fragments of the Human Emperor Jar. Chu Fengmian was now strong enough to obtain 5 of the fragments of the Emperor Jar. It seemed that Chu Fengmian and the Emperor Jar were fated to be together. Perhaps one day, the Emperor Jar could really be reborn from Chu Fengmian's hands. Come out, Emperor Jar. Chu Fengmian waved his hand, and the broken jar of the Human Emperor appeared in his palm. Since he had already obtained this fragment, Chu Fengmian naturally didn't delay any further. He directly refined it and merged it into one. The Emperor Jar was originally a broken spirit weapon. Therefore, it didn't need Chu Fengmian to activate any spiritual energy. The fragment of the Emperor Jar was integrated into the Emperor Jar. It repaired one of the damaged parts. Every time he obtained a fragment of the Emperor Jar, the power in it would increase exponentially. The Emperor Jar was condensed from only 4 fragments. In terms of power alone, it was enough to surpass any heaven-grade spiritual weapon in the 9 regions. It had reached a level beyond heaven-grade spiritual weapons. If he could obtain all 9 fragments of the Emperor Jar one day, Chu Fengmian would be able to see the true power of an extreme immortal weapon. As the fragments merged, the power contained in the Emperor Jar grew stronger and stronger. Luo Shi, who was standing aside, felt a little frightened by this power. Luo Shi could sense that this power wasn't hostile to her. However, she was a little flustered when she saw the human Emperor jar. She saw with her own eyes that Chu Fengmian used the Emperor jar to force back the 3 sovereigns who had joined forces and seriously injured them. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have imagined that a spiritual weapon could reach such a terrifying level. Is this an extreme immortal weapon? Luo Shi asked with uncertainty. Indeed, only the legendary extreme Dao celestial weapon could do this. However, this extreme immortal weapon was something that even the 7 great sects and the 6 demon sects had never possessed. Now that it had appeared in Chu Fengmian's hands, how could she believe it? Yes, this is called the Emperor Jar. It's an extreme immortal weapon. Yes, it's a broken extreme immortal weapon. There are a total of 9 fragments, and I only have 5. Chu Fengmian smiled when he heard Luo Shi's words. He didn't need to hide anything from Luo Shi. If Luo Shi still wanted to harm Chu Fengmian now, she wouldn't have chosen to save him back then. Of course, Chu Fengmian wouldn't hide anything from her. A broken extreme immortal weapon. In other words, it's only a fragment? Luo Shi's eyes were filled with shock when she heard Chu Fengmian's words. The power of the Emperor Jar terrified her to the extreme. She felt that if she were to take the attack of the Emperor Jar's power, she would die without a doubt. But such a terrifying power was actually still a fragment. Just how terrifying would a true extreme Dao immortal weapon be? Luo Shi couldn't even imagine it in her mind. Just as Luo Shi's imagination was running wild, the fragments of the Emperor Jar had completely condensed. At a glance, only the fragments on the surface seemed to be less, and the incomplete lines were also a little more complete. However, Chu Fengmian knew that every time a fragment of the Emperor Jar was integrated, the Emperor Jar would undergo a new transformation. The current power of the Emperor Jar was probably several times more terrifying than before. Chapter 921. Putting the Emperor Jar back into the empty ring, Chu Fengmian's face was full of smiles. Although it was extremely dangerous to come to the House of Storms this time and he was almost forced into a desperate situation, it was really a blessing in disguise. He accidentally obtained the real treasure of the House of Storms. If it weren't for the 4 sovereigns who set a trap and led Chu Fengmian to the Blaze Sky Lake, Chu Fengmian would never have thought that the treasure of the House of Storms would be in the Blaze Sky Lake. Not only Chu Fengmian, but probably no one else would have thought that Senior Immortal Kanglin would actually leave the treasure at the bottom of the Blaze Sky Lake. Fortunately, there was a fragment of the Emperor Jar in Senior Immortal Kanglin's treasure, which allowed Chu Fengmian to detect the existence of the treasure. Saint Grade Spirit Stone, Kanglin Immortal Armor, Sky Crystal, Emperor Jar Fragment. I wonder what else is behind this. Chu Fengmian was looking forward to seeing what other treasures were hidden in the palace. The treasures left behind by Senior Immortal Kanglin were indeed not ordinary. Apart from the House of Storms, they couldn't be found anywhere else in the 9 regions. Let's go. Chu Fengmian looked at Luo Shi and said with a smile. Luo Shi was almost a little dazed along the way. She had never imagined that there would be so many treasures. Luo Shi had been following behind Chu Fengmian, wanting to see what other treasures there were in the House of Storms. The 2 walked for an unknown distance in the palace. This palace was like a bottomless pit, as if there was no end to it. Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi had already urged their escape light to hurry on, covering 100 miles in an instant. But even so, after walking for an hour, Chu Fengmian still hadn't reached the end. What's going on? Could it be that there are no more treasures in the House of Storms? But that's not right. If there are no treasures, there should be an end. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he quickened his pace again. No matter what, he had to reach the end of the House of Storms today. After another 10 minutes, Chu Fengmian was walking through the palace when he suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Luo Shi asked curiously when she saw Chu Fengmian suddenly stop. The spiritual energy here is so strange. A strange look appeared in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Suddenly, streams of spiritual energy were emitted from the palace. However, in Chu Fengmian's eyes, this spiritual energy seemed a little strange. Two different types of spiritual power, one ice and one fire, were unexpectedly transmitted from inside. What surprised Chu Fengmian was that these two spiritual energies, which were like fire and water, did not restrain each other at all. Instead, they complemented each other and formed an extremely unique power. This was something Chu Fengmian had never seen before. Looks like there's something else in the depths of this palace. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but quicken his pace. After another 10 minutes of walking, a large door finally appeared at the end of the palace. One side of the door was ice-cold blue, while the other side was fiery red. It looked extremely strange. The unique power of ice and fire was being emitted from behind the door. There are no restrictions on the door. Chu Fengmian carefully glanced at the door. When he saw that there were no restrictions on the door, Chu Fengmian slowly moved his hand and pushed the door open. In the House of Storms, Chu Fengmian had to be very careful. Against a figure like Venerable Kanglin, he had to be very careful. Even if he casually set up a restriction, it would be extremely fatal to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had to be very careful. The door slowly opened, and a gust of wind came head-on. This gust of wind swept up the spiritual energy of ice and fire. When it blew on Chu Fengmian's body, Chu Fengmian suddenly felt extremely hot. However, in the next moment, Chu Fengmian felt extremely cold. Even an ancestor would not be able to withstand the sudden change. No, the spiritual energy here is too strange. I can't bear it. Luoshi's face was a little pale. She hadn't entered yet, but her spiritual energy was almost unable to bear it. Even if she activated her spiritual energy, she couldn't completely resist the heat and coldness. Then wait outside. I'll go in and take a look. Chu Fengmian glanced at Luoshi and said. The stranger the spiritual energy emitted from the door, the more it was enough to arouse Chu Fengmian's curiosity. He also wanted to see what was hidden in the depths of this palace. You have to be careful. Luoshi took a few steps back and retreated to a place where the gust of wind couldn't reach. She reminded him worriedly. Don't worry. Chu Fengmian smiled and stepped through the door. Behind the door was an incomparably huge open space. In the center of this open space, there were two huge rocks that could be seen at a glance. Of these two huge rocks, one was completely red, and a kind of colorless flame was constantly burning on it. Chu Fengmian could tell at a glance that this flame was actually the most terrifying of the 9 heavenly flames, the pure yang heavenly flame. Such a rock was actually able to emit the pure yang heavenly flame? Chu Fengmian's shock hadn't subsided yet. He looked at the other rock, and the shock in his eyes didn't diminish at all. It was even more exaggerated than before. The other rock had an icy blue color, and a chilling aura was emitted from it. When this chill came into contact with the pure yang heavenly flame, it was actually enough to freeze the flame. The pure yang heavenly flame was almost the most terrifying flame in the 9 realms. Now, the chill emanating from the other rock was actually enough to freeze the pure yang heavenly flame. How terrifying was this cold? Between the two rocks, the pure yang heavenly flame and the chill constantly clashed and reached a kind of balance. The strange spiritual energy that could be felt from the outside was emanating from between the two of them. What exactly is this thing? There's actually such a strange thing in the 9 realms? Even with Chu Fengmian's knowledge, he was momentarily stunned. He couldn't figure out the origin of these two rocks. A rock that could emit the pure yang heavenly flame was not recorded in any of the ancient books in the 9 realms. Kid, where did you go this time? Why has the spiritual energy around you become so strange? Xing Xian's voice suddenly rang out in Chu Fengmian's mind. Then, Xing Xian's voice sounded as if he had seen a ghost, and he shouted in disbelief. Chapter 922. Heavenly Fire Divine Stone? Extreme Frost Divine Stone? Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with confusion when he heard the two names from Xing Xian's mouth. Chu Fengmian's knowledge was second only to those old antiques who had lived for a long time in the 9 regions. He had lived 2 lives and read many ancient books. It could be said that he knew a lot about most of the mysterious items in the 9 regions. However, Chu Fengmian had never heard of these two names before. There was only one possibility. These two divine stones weren't from the 9 regions, but from the outer regions. That was why Xing Xian knew. Heavenly Fire Divine Stone and Extreme Frost Divine Stone. Who would put these two damn things together? Who did this? A madman. Whoever did this must be a madman. Xing Xian shouted wildly in Chu Fengmian's mind. This was the first time Chu Fengmian had seen Xing Xian lose his composure. In Chu Fengmian's opinion, Xing Xian was an extremely mysterious guy. His background and knowledge were far from what Chu Fengmian could see through. He didn't expect Xing Xian to have such a side. Are these two divine stones very dangerous? Chu Fengmian asked tentatively. Judging from Xing Xian's loss of composure, these two divine stones were definitely not ordinary items. Very dangerous? Xing Xian snorted coldly when he heard Chu Fengmian's question. Only then did he calm down and speak. Any one of these two divine stones contains enough power to easily kill you tens of thousands of times. No, it can even completely destroy the House of Storms. Any one of these divine stones can directly destroy the House of Storms? Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with disbelief. Although the House of Storms wasn't comparable to the ruins of End Sky, it was still incomparably large. It would be very difficult for Chu Fengmian to explore it all by himself. Destroy the House of Storms? Even those never-wither realm ancestors wouldn't dare say such a thing. Now, any one of the two divine stones in front of him could actually destroy the House of Storms? If Chu Fengmian didn't believe Xing Xian, he would have thought Xing Xian was spouting nonsense. What, you don't believe me? If you don't believe me, you can try. But before that, you should send me to the 9 regions. I still need to wait for the next master. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Xing Xian curled his lips and said, I don't want to die in this damned place with you. Remember, stay away from these two damn things. Hearing Xing Xian's words, Chu Fengmian naturally understood. Even Xing Xian was so wary of them. These two divine stones were indeed extremely dangerous. Any one of them could destroy the House of Storms. However, this place was the treasure left behind by Venerable Kanglin. Why did Venerable Kanglin leave behind these two divine stones? However, only a madman would place these two divine stones together. Who would spend so much effort to leave these two divine stones here? Xing Xian's words revealed a bit of surprise. Not to mention the fact that it was extremely difficult to find these two god stones in the first place. It would take a lot of effort just to place these two god stones in the palace. Moreover, it would be even more difficult to balance the power of these two god stones. It was impossible for such a large amount of effort to be without a purpose. Chu Fengmian's thoughts were the same as Xing Xian's. Even Venerable Kanglin, who was invincible in the 9 regions, wouldn't be so bored as to put these two divine stones into the palace for no reason. Chu Fengmian scanned the surroundings of the two god stones. Suddenly, there seemed to be a flash of light in the air in front of him. Chu Fengmian abruptly grabbed it to take a look. This light was actually a jade talisman. This is... Chu Fengmian picked up the jade talisman and injected spiritual energy into it. Suddenly, an image appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. This image was densely recorded with countless words. It was actually a technique. Chaotic 5 Emperors Technique? Chu Fengmian could faintly see that this technique was called the Chaotic 5 Emperors Technique. Looking down, Chu Fengmian was a little stunned. The first sentence of this Chaotic 5 Emperors Technique was that those without God's veins could not cultivate it. Otherwise, they would die without a doubt. It was exactly the same as the first sentence of the Battle Dragon Technique. Those without God's veins could not cultivate it. What kind of technique was this? After Chu Fengmian recovered from his shock, he hurriedly continued to read. However, he found that the mystery of this Chaotic 5 Emperors Technique was simply beyond his imagination. The mystery of this Chaotic 5 Emperors Technique was countless times more mysterious than any technique that Chu Fengmian had seen in the 9 regions. It was not inferior to the Battle Dragon Technique in the slightest. In fact, it was slightly stronger. However, the battle dragon technique that Chu Fengmian had learned was only at the first level. If he could reach the second or third level, it would be on par with this chaotic 5 emperors technique. Xing Xian, do you know about the chaotic 5 emperors technique? Chu Fengmian hurriedly asked Xing Xian after he finished reading. This chaotic 5 emperors technique could be said to be the same as the battle dragon technique. It was definitely not a technique that could be found in the 9 regions. In the entire history of the 9 domains, the divine pulse had always been a distant legend that cultivators without a divine pulse could not cultivate. If Chu Fengmian had not personally cultivated the divine pulse, he would not have believed that there were divine pulse cultivators in the 9 regions. Chaotic 5 emperors technique? Isn't this the technique that the 5 lunatics cultivated? Is this the chaotic 5 emperors technique recorded in your jade talisman? Xing Xian was slightly surprised when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. However, he still explained. This chaotic 5 emperors technique is an extremely crazy technique. Although it is incomparably mysterious, it is really too crazy. Even if 10,000 people cultivated it, there might not be anyone who could cultivate it successfully. No wonder there are 2 divine stones here. It turns out that someone left behind the chaotic 5 emperors technique. These 2 divine stones are related to the chaotic 5 emperors technique? Chu Fengmian asked in surprise. He had only taken a cursory look and did not pay attention. You will know after you take a look. As for this chaotic 5 emperors technique, it is up to you whether you want to cultivate it or not. After Xing Xian finished speaking, he did not say anything else. As for Chu Fengmian, he once again injected a surge of spiritual energy into the jade talisman. This time, he carefully read through the chaotic 5 emperors technique. Time passed second by second. Chu Fengmian stood motionless at the same spot for a full 6 hours. This chaotic 5 emperors technique is really crazy. After reading the chaotic 5 emperors technique, Chu Fengmian finally let out a sigh of relief. His only comment was that it was crazy. Chapter 923. When Chu Fengmian had finished reading the battle dragon art, his evaluation was heaven-defying. A person could possess the battle dragon bloodline and possess the power to rival an ancient battle dragon. The battle dragon art was mystical enough to be called heaven-defying. However, Chu Fengmian's evaluation of the Chaos 5 Emperors art was crazy to the extreme. It was no wonder that Xing Xian had told him that it was up to Chu Fengmian to decide whether to cultivate the Chaos 5 Emperors art. It was because the Chaos 5 Emperors art was simply too dangerous. It was extremely dangerous even for divine vein cultivators. As for ordinary cultivators, they didn't even have the qualifications to cultivate it. The first step to cultivating the Chaos 5 Emperors art was to devour the 5 elemental wonders. The 5 elemental wonders that one had to devour weren't simple 5 elemental wonders, but the most terrifying kind. They were the 2 divine stones in front of him. Extreme Cold Divine Stone. Heavenly Flame Divine Stone. When the 5 elemental spiritual energy was condensed to the extreme, the 5 elemental divine stone would be born. The power of any one of these divine stones was enough to destroy the entire returning ruined sky. As a matter of fact, it was enough to destroy a huge area in the central region. The first step to cultivating the Chaos 5 Emperors art was to devour one of the 2 divine stones in front of him. Devouring such a terrifying power into one's body to refine it. The only word Chu Fengmian could think of to describe it was crazy. He didn't know how crazy a cultivator had to be to create such a frightening cultivation technique. However, although the Chaos 5 Emperors art was crazy, the benefits one would obtain after cultivating it were also incomparably huge. The cultivation of the Chaos 5 Emperors art could be said to be risking one's life. Once one could devour one of the divine stones. Using the power of the divine stones to refine one's body was enough to transform any ordinary body into one that wasn't inferior to an innate divine body. Innate divine body was also an innate divine body. It was because the innate divine body was lodged in some cultivators' bodies that it became an innate divine body. Warriors with innate divine bodies had an innate advantage, whether it was in cultivation or fighting against enemies. The Battle Dragon bloodline that Chu Fengmian obtained from cultivating the Battle Dragon art was no longer obvious as his cultivation base increased. Any ruler or even any life and death realm great ancestor had obtained many fortuitous encounters. The reason why Chu Fengmian was still able to fight above his level was mostly because of his power of creation, his countless spiritual weapons, and his unparalleled sword intent. However, Chu Fengmian's body was still very ordinary and not an innate divine body. If Chu Fengmian could possess the innate divine body, his strength would increase countless times. Although the Primal Chaos 5 Emperor's art was crazy, it was still extremely attractive to Chu Fengmian. Indeed, his body needed to be modified. If he had the innate divine body, even if the three rulers joined forces to deal with him, he was confident that he could fight them alone. This life of mine, since I've already been reborn, since I've already died once, there's nothing to be afraid of. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. In his previous life, he could be said to have been a coward. In this life, he would not have any fear. So what if it was dangerous? The art of the 5 chaotic emperors was not impossible to cultivate. As long as there was a chance of survival, Chu Fengmian would give it a try. I've decided to cultivate it. Chu Fengmian nodded and said in a deep voice. You really want to cultivate the art of the 5 chaotic emperors' art? Xing Xian heard Chu Fengmian's words and asked again. You should be clear about the dangers of the art of the 5 chaotic emperors' art. However, I have to remind you that if you plan to cultivate it today, it will be much more dangerous than what is recorded. Xing Xian deliberately kept Chu Fengmian in suspense. Seeing that Chu Fengmian did not respond, he continued to speak. The art of the 5 chaotic emperors' art is indeed an extremely demonic cultivation technique. If you reach the Great Completion realm, you will be able to devour all 5 elements of spiritual energy and become a chaotic divine body. However, this is only an illusory legend. Normally, when cultivating the art of the 5 chaotic emperors' art, you will choose to devour one of the 5 elements of spiritual energy. However, today, you can't devour either of these 2 divine stones. The power of these 2 divine stones of the 5 elements are now neutralizing each other, which is why you can come here. However, once you devour one of them, the other will definitely explode with all its power. At that time, you will definitely die. Xing Xian said slowly. Therefore, if you want to cultivate the art of the 5 chaotic emperors' art today, you must devour both divine stones at the same time. This is countless times more difficult than simply devouring one. You have to understand. After saying all this, Xing Xian did not speak again. Only Chu Fengmian could decide whether or not to cultivate the art of the 5 chaotic emperors' art. He could only tell Chu Fengmian the dangers. Devouring 2 divine stones at the same time. Devouring divine stones was an extremely dangerous action. It could be said that less than 1 in 10,000 people who truly cultivated the art of the 5 chaotic emperors would be able to survive. The possibility of devouring 2 divine stones at the same time was countless times lower. The power of the 2 divine stones was completely different. Once Chu Fengmian devoured them, if he was slightly careless, a fierce battle would definitely erupt in his body. At that time, Chu Fengmian would definitely die. Devouring 2 divine stones at the same time? After hearing Xing Xian's words, Chu Fengmian did not panic in the slightest. Instead, he revealed a cold smile. Then give it a try. The ice and fire divine body is countless times more powerful than a single divine body. Chu Fengmian's eyes suddenly opened. He had already completely memorized the art of the 5 chaotic emperors' art. He could devour the 2 divine stones at any time. Chu Fengmian slowly walked to the center of the 2 divine stones and slowly sat down. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian made his move. From the palms of his hands, a vortex suddenly appeared. The 2 vortexes directly devoured the 2 divine stones at the 2 sides. In an instant, the 2 divine stones that had been in the palace for an unknown period of time were suddenly uprooted. In the air, they turned into extremely pure spiritual energy and all of it drilled into the vortex. The Heavenly Fire Divine Stone and the Extreme Frost Divine Stone were condensed from the purest 5 elements of spiritual energy. The first step Chu Fengmian took to activate the art of the 5 chaotic emperors' art was to scatter the 2 divine stones and turn them into the purest spiritual energy. Then, he devoured them all into his body. Boom! The moment the 2 divine stones entered Chu Fengmian's body, a trace of blood suddenly flowed out from the corner of Chu Fengmian's mouth. The moment the 2 balls of spiritual energy, one ice and one fire, were devoured by Chu Fengmian, they immediately began to collide violently. Chapter 924. The Divine Stone of Heavenly Fire and the Divine Stone of Extreme Frost. The spiritual energy of either of these 2 stones was enough to easily destroy the House of Storms. Chu Fengmian forcefully devoured such a terrifying amount of spiritual energy. Fire and water were incompatible. The spiritual energy of the 2 stones burst out in an instant in Chu Fengmian's body and began to fight against each other. Chu Fengmian's internal organs were frozen in one moment and burned by the heavenly fire in the next. This feeling was much more terrible than any pain Chu Fengmian had ever experienced. Kid, if you can't hold on, stop immediately. You haven't started refining yet. You still have a chance to stop. Xing Xian could see Chu Fengmian's pain and hurriedly shouted. The pain of devouring a single piece of G.O.D. rock was enough to kill countless geniuses while cultivating the art of 5 primal chaos emperors. Now that Chu Fengmian was swallowing 2 stones at the same time, the pain was many times more terrible. Although Xing Xian knew that Chu Fengmian's willpower was absolutely tenacious, he was still worried that Chu Fengmian would really die from the pain. No! Chu Fengmian's ferocious face forced a smile. He, Chu Fengmian, had been reborn. He would never give up in this life. The chaotic 5 elements art was crazy. Chu Fengmian was even crazier than him. Refine for me. Chu Fengmian suddenly mobilized his spiritual energy and began to refine the power of the 2 stones. Once he chose to start refining, there was no turning back. There were only 2 paths. Succeed or die. There was no other way. What a crazy kid. How can a kid in his early 20s have such terrifying willpower? Xing Xian saw that Chu Fengmian had already made up his mind and could only shake his head helplessly. Since Chu Fengmian had chosen to refine, there was no turning back. Even Xing Xian felt strange about Chu Fengmian's willpower. Since Xing Xian was born, he had seen countless geniuses and monsters. But Chu Fengmian was the most special one. I hope you won't let me down. Let me leave the 9 regions and go back. Xing Xian whispered to himself. He raised his head and seemed to be looking at the outer realm. From his eyes, one could see some nostalgia and killing intent. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. Chu Fengmian's body was alternating between hot and cold every second. Regardless of whether it was the flame or the chill, they were both the most terrifying existences in the entire 9 zones. Chu Fengmian's 5 viscera and 6 bowels were almost destroyed every time they were flipped upside down. However, Chu Fengmian relied on his terrifying vitality to hold on every time. 1,000 times, 10,000 times, 1,000,000 times. No matter how many times Chu Fengmian's body was destroyed, his body could always recover. 6 hours had passed. Almost an instant of pain was enough to make a ruler die from the pain. As for Chu Fengmian, he had already endured for a full 6 hours. His pain did not lessen with time. Instead, it became more and more intense. As Chu Fengmian refined more and more ice and fire spiritual energy, the confrontation between the 2 spiritual energies became more and more serious. However, Chu Fengmian was still sitting in the same place, motionless. His face was already extremely ferocious. However, Chu Fengmian's eyes were still incomparably resolute. This resoluteness was unshakable. Divine power of ice and fire, subdue. After an unknown period of time, Chu Fengmian suddenly stood up. The moment he stood up abruptly, his aura was extremely terrifying. In the face of such pain, Chu Fengmian's aura did not weaken. Instead, it became more and more terrifying as the training went on. 2 spiritual veins gradually condensed on Chu Fengmian's back. These 2 spiritual veins, one ice and one fire, began to condense as Chu Fengmian continued to devour the spiritual energy of the 2 divine stones. He actually withstood it. Xing Xian looked at the 2 spiritual veins that were gradually condensing on Chu Fengmian's back. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Throughout history, countless geniuses and monsters had died because of this chaotic 5 emperors art. The geniuses who were able to cultivate the chaotic 5 emperors art were all geniuses who possessed the divine veins. It could be said that their aptitude was not inferior to Chu Fengmian's. Some of them were even more terrifying than Chu Fengmian's. However, countless of them had died under this pain, not to mention that Chu Fengmian was devouring 2 divine stones at the same time. Xing Xian probably never thought that Chu Fengmian would actually be able to make it through. The moment the 2 spiritual veins condensed, it meant that the cultivation was completed. The condensing of spiritual veins was the final step of the chaotic 5 emperors art. However, it was also the most dangerous step. The slightest carelessness could lead to a complete loss. What exactly did he go through to have such a tenacious will? Xing Xian looked at Chu Fengmian and muttered to himself. He did not choose Chu Fengmian willingly. It was just that the person at the bottom of the lake was who. He had no other choice but to accept Chu Fengmian as his master. Therefore, Xing Xian did not expect Chu Fengmian to reach this step. He also could not imagine why Chu Fengmian desired power so much. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian had seen his master being killed with his own eyes. His senior brothers and sisters were killed by the 7 great sections. Chu Fengmian's desire for power had reached its peak. As long as he could obtain power, Chu Fengmian would not choose to give up no matter how difficult it was. The power of the 2 divine stones has finally been completely devoured. Chu Fengmian could clearly feel that the power of the 2 divine stones had been completely devoured by Chu Fengmian. All the power was integrated into Chu Fengmian's body to condense the 2 spiritual veins. However, Chu Fengmian could not relax at this time. He was even more vigilant than before. The pain that Chu Fengmian was suffering now was countless times more than when he was devouring. Even Chu Fengmian's soul felt like it was being torn apart by this power. The pain was extreme. Even death, for Chu Fengmian, was a kind of desire, a kind of release. No, I can't die. I haven't taken my revenge. I haven't killed the 7 great sects. I can't die. Revenge. These 2 words made Chu Fengmian's eyes turn red. He desired power. His everything was for these 2 words. Therefore, he could not give up. Condense. Ice and fire divine power. Subdue them all. I want to stand at the top of the 9 regions. Anyone, any existence, must submit. Chapter 925. Chu Fengmian shouted angrily. Boom! Beside Chu Fengmian, the ice and fire spiritual energies were gradually surrendering to Chu Fengmian. An indomitable aura rose from Chu Fengmian's back and soared into the sky. He, Chu Fengmian, wanted to be the emperor of the 9 regions. Now, he couldn't even subdue the 2 god stones. How could he subdue them and dominate the 9 regions? Boom! Boom! The 2 spiritual meridians formed behind Chu Fengmian's back in a breath's time. Spiritual energy gushed out from the 2 spiritual veins. It was as if a long river had finally been opened. The endless spiritual energy filled Chu Fengmian's body like a flood. Chu Fengmian's power continued to surge in this spiritual energy, and it continued to increase without end. Chu Fengmian's realm didn't change, but in terms of power, it was several times stronger than before. This was the power of the innate godly body. Warriors who possessed the innate divine body could be said to be invincible when fighting against those of the same level. This was because their spiritual energy alone was many times stronger than martial artists of the same realm. Moreover, it was supported by the innate power. Now, Chu Fengmian could finally taste the power of the innate godly body. He had swallowed the heavenly fire divine stone and the extreme cold divine stone to cultivate the ice and fire divine body. it was many times stronger than the godly body that had swallowed a single godstone. The godly body that had swallowed a single godstone was similar to Hanyu Li's profound cold body. Among the countless innate godly bodies, it could only be ranked in the middle. Although he was also extremely talented, there was still a gap between him and the innate divine bodies that were ranked in the top 10. However, Chu Fengmian's ice and fire divine body had two spiritual meridians, one ice and one fire, that complemented each other in Chu Fengmian's body. The ice and fire divine body was probably not inferior to the top 10 divine bodies among the innate divine bodies. Chu Fengmian slowly raised his hand. From his palm, two forces, one ice and one fire, hovered at the same time. Is this the power of the ice and fire divine body? Chu Fengmian suddenly hit the air with his palm. Boom! Rumble! In front of Chu Fengmian, almost unparalleled power erupted. The power of this palm alone was even close to the power that Chu Fengmian had unleashed when he used the Mortal Emperor Jar. What a terrifying power! What the hell is going on? How could there be such a huge change? Luo Shi watched from afar as Chu Fengmian made his move. She kept retreating, afraid that she would be affected by this power. If anyone was affected by this power, even if they were a ruler, they would most likely be doomed. In less than a day, Chu Fengmian's strength had grown to such a terrifying level. His realm hasn't changed at all, but his strength has increased countless times. This is beyond the heavens mandate realm. Even emperors aren't a match for him anymore. Luo Shi looked at Chu Fengmian in shock. However, Luo Shi would never have thought that Chu Fengmian would have to pay such a huge price to possess such power. The slightest misstep would result in eternal damnation. In the entire 9 regions, Chu Fengmian was probably the only one who could endure such great pain to cultivate the art of the 5 Chaos Emperors. Chu Fengmian looked at the scene in front of him and was very satisfied. The power of the ice and fire divine body that he had just activated was probably several times stronger than before. The divine body condensed by the art of the 5 Chaos Emperors was not inferior to the current divine body. The true chaotic divine body was even more powerful than any innate divine body. It could be said that although Chu Fengmian's realm did not change after coming to the House of Storms, his strength was many times stronger than before. The ice and fire divine body that Chu Fengmian had condensed had also found a fragment of the Mortal Emperor Jar. The ice and fire divine body's help to Chu Fengmian was not that simple. In the future, as Chu Fengmian's strength became stronger, the ice and fire divine body would be more helpful to him. The ice and fire divine body was exactly the same as the innate divine body. The stronger the warrior, the more he could exert the innate divine power. It seems that the treasures of the House of Storms should be here. The square where Chu Fengmian was at was already at the end of the palace. It seemed that the art of the 5 Chaos Emperors and the 2 Divine Stones should be the last treasures left by Venerable Kanglin. I wonder what kind of person Venerable Kanglin is to step out of the 9 regions. If one day I step out of the 9 regions, I might have a chance to meet him. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sigh. Chu Fengmian had obtained a lot of ancient caverns and seen a lot of treasures, but the treasures left behind by immortal Venerable Kanglin were absolutely the most shocking to him. Let's go. After sighing, Chu Fengmian looked at Luo Shi and said. The 2 figures gradually left the depths of the palace and walked towards the outside. It had only been 3 days since the opening of the House of Storms. The 3 sovereigns should still be in the House of Storms and had not left. It's time to settle the score. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered, and some killing intent emerged in his eyes. The 3 sovereigns had forced Chu Fengmian into such a desperate situation. Chu Fengmian had sworn that he would kill the 3 of them. Now, it was indeed the time to fulfill his promise. Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi's figures returned to the entrance of the palace. After leaving the palace, they were about to return to the Flame Heavenly Lake. But this time, facing the heavenly fire of the Flame Heavenly Lake, Chu Fengmian's heart was not as frightened as before. Hold me tight. Chu Fengmian carried Luo Shi with one hand and suddenly rushed out. As soon as they left the palace and fell into the Flame Heavenly Lake, countless colorless pure yang heavenly fire swept towards Chu Fengmian. These pure yang heavenly fire were enough to devour all living things. Humph! Chu Fengmian glanced at the pure yang heavenly fire and activated the ice and fire spiritual vein. Suddenly, layers of blue mysterious ice condensed around Chu Fengmian. Even the surrounding pure yang heavenly fire could not burn through the blue mysterious ice. Chu Fengmian stood in it and walked through the flame heavenly lake, safe and sound. Whoosh! Chu Fengmian carried Luo Shi and his figure gradually turned into a ray of light, flying directly above the flame heavenly lake. Chapter 926. It's been 3 days. Why haven't the two of them come up yet? Above the blaze heaven lake, Emperor Bao frowned and said as he looked at the countless flames that filled the lake. The sky above the blaze heaven lake was still filled with countless spiritual energy that formed an inescapable net. These densely packed restrictions completely sealed off the sky above the blaze heaven lake. No one could leave the blaze heaven lake. Emperor Bao, Emperor Ning, and Emperor Li, the three sovereigns were standing above the blaze heaven lake, overlooking everything below. In the past 3 days, they had not left the blaze heaven lake. Instead, they were waiting for Chu Fengmian's attack. However, 3 days had passed and they still could not find Chu Fengmian's figure. Maybe this kid has already died in the flame sky lake and was burned to ashes by the heavenly fire. Even a Wushang old ancestor wouldn't be able to hold on for 3 days. How could this kid do it? Emperor Ning said impatiently. Let's leave. It's not easy to come to the House of Storms. Instead of wasting time here, we might as well look for the treasures. That's right. It's a pity not to look for the treasures of the House of Storms. This kid is definitely dead after falling into the blaze heaven lake. Let's not bother about him anymore. Emperor Li also said from the side. Let's wait. This kid is hiding too many strange things. Maybe he's not dead yet. Emperor Bao's eyes flickered as he shook his head. Chu Fengmian had escaped from the encirclement of the experts of the 7 major sects countless times. He would not believe that Chu Fengmian would die until the very last moment. Emperor Ning and Emperor Li shook their heads when they heard Emperor Bao's words. However, they did not say anything else. In their opinion, Emperor Bao was being too cautious. In 3 days, even an immortal realm supreme old ancestor would be burned to death by the heavenly fire if he fell into the blaze heaven lake. Not to mention an immortal realm brat. At this moment, in the blaze heaven lake, a ray of light was extremely fast. It shuttled through the countless flames and rushed up from the bottom of the blaze heaven lake. Boom! At this moment, a rumbling sound resounded within the flame sky lake. What's going on? Someone is rushing up from the blaze heaven lake? Is it Chu Fengmian? He's not dead yet? The 3 sovereigns' faces changed as they quickly turned their heads to look. They immediately saw Chu Fengmian, shuttling through the countless heavenly fire of the blaze heaven lake. 3 days? This kid is still not dead? Emperor Ning and Emperor Li looked at Chu Fengmian and had a look of disbelief. 3 days. Even if they were to be in the Yantian Lake, they would undoubtedly die. However, Chu Fengmian was actually still alive. However, their shocked looks of course, Chu SSG's SSSSSSSSS died SSS. SSSS Fengning TS he stayed in the flame heaven lake for 3 days. No matter what method he used, he must be incomparably weak right now. Let's take advantage of this opportunity to kill this kid first. As Sovereign Ning spoke, he had already made his move. Emperor Ning's figure suddenly disappeared in the air. He turned into a ray of light and rushed over to where Chu Fengmian was. In an instant, he was in front of Chu Fengmian. His face was extremely ferocious as he slammed his palm at Chu Fengmian's chest. Die, kid! The palm contained endless killing intent as it enveloped Chu Fengmian. In 3 days, Emperor Ning had fully recovered from his injuries. Now, he was in a state of full strength. The sharp spiritual energy in the palm struck Chu Fengmian. I didn't expect you to still be waiting for me. Well, I don't have to look for you one by one. Chu Fengmian saw that the 3 sovereigns had not left yet. It seemed that they still wanted to wait for Chu Fengmian. That's good. It would save Chu Fengmian the trouble of looking for them one by one. In the face of Sovereign Ning's terrifying palm strike, Chu Fengmian sneered. He didn't try to dodge, but instead, rushed forward. He slammed his palm at Emperor Ning with his bare hands. Courting death? Seeing Chu Fengmian resist with his bare hands, Emperor Ning's eyes were filled with mockery. Previously, Chu Fengmian was able to contend with them because of his sword intent and the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword. If he could not kill Chu Fengmian with his bare hands, then he did not deserve to be called an sovereign. Hearing Emperor Ning's mockery, Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a cold smile. Just as the two palms were about to collide in the air, Chu Fengmian suddenly said softly, "Heavenly fire." The power of the fire spiritual vein was released from Chu Fengmian's body and integrated into Chu Fengmian's palm. Layers of pure yang heavenly fire spread out from Chu Fengmian's palm. Die! Boom! Countless pure yang heavenly fire blasted out with Chu Fengmian's palm. The pure yang heavenly fire was enough to burn everything. The spiritual energy of Emperor Ning's palm was burned into nothing by the pure yang heavenly fire. But it was not over yet. Countless pure yang heavenly fire engulfed Emperor Ning's body and plunged him into a sea of fire. Ah! What kind of fire is this? Pure yang heavenly fire. How is this possible? How can you control the pure yang heavenly fire? In the sea of fire, Emperor Ning screamed in agony. At first, Emperor Ning did not take the fire seriously. Ordinary fire could not threaten sovereigns like him. But in the next moment, Emperor Ning's expression changed completely. Once touched by the pure yang heavenly fire, it would not stop until one was dead. His spiritual energy could not resist the burning of the pure yang heavenly fire. Die! Chu Fengmian looked at Emperor Ning and slapped him again. Emperor Ning's body was smashed into pieces by this palm. Only a mist of blood was left in the air. Sovereign Ning, a sovereign of the Heavenly Mandate realm, was killed in a single move by Chu Fengmian. Not bad. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a satisfied smile. The pure yang heavenly fire was not something that could be controlled by humans. Only a few people with innate divine bodies were qualified to control it. Chu Fengmian condensed the pure yang heavenly fire all of a sudden. Even a sovereign would be killed by it. This was the terrifying part of the divine body of ice and fire. Devour! Chu Fengmian looked at the mist of blood and waved his hand. Suddenly, a vortex was formed. It devoured the blood mist that filled the sky and sent it to the sacred tree, nourishing the sacred tree and causing it to grow continuously. Chapter 927. The divine tree was still very weak. Every time it devoured the blood essence of an emperor, it would grow a little. Chu Fengmian could feel that his body was becoming tougher as the divine tree grew. Emperor Bao and Emperor Li only recovered from their daze when they saw Chu Fengmian's aura rising steadily. Emperor Ning died just like that? Emperor Ning was an emperor. Who would have thought that he couldn't even withstand a single blow from Chu Fengmian? Chu Fengmian didn't even use a spiritual weapon. He could kill Emperor Ning with his bare hands. Not good. This kid must have had a fortuitous encounter. We can't let him leave the flame heavenly lake. Emperor Bao was the first to react and shouted. Now that Chu Fengmian was still in the flame heavenly lake, they could still think of a way to deal with him. If Chu Fengmian rushed out, it would be really troublesome. Seal! On the flame heavenly lake, the spiritual energy that had been set up long ago was suddenly activated. Streams of spiritual energies intertwined with each other, forming a huge array that blocked the flame heavenly lake. At the same time, Emperor Bao and Emperor Li attacked at the same time. The spiritual energy on their bodies instantly burst out. The Million Treasure River bombarded the air, and endless spiritual energy bombarded Chu Fengmian's body. Within a breath's time, Emperor Bao and Emperor Li had unleashed countless martial skills at Chu Fengmian at the same time. Countless martial skills drowned Chu Fengmian. If it was before, Chu Fengmian would have to desperately defend against the joint attack of Emperor Bao and Emperor Li. He might even have to use all his trump cards. But this time, Chu Fengmian didn't do anything. He didn't even care about the bombardment of the martial skills. He directly carried Luo Shi and rushed towards the flame heavenly lake. What's going on? Is this kid crazy? Seeing Chu Fengmian's action, Emperor Bao and Emperor Li's eyes were filled with shock. Under the bombardment of such martial skills, Chu Fengmian didn't care and didn't even try to defend. But in the next moment, when the martial skills bombarded Chu Fengmian's body, a thin layer of ice suddenly condensed around Chu Fengmian's body. This thin ice looked like it would shatter with a touch, but when the countless martial techniques bombarded it, it actually did not budge in the slightest. All the martial techniques were blocked by the thin layer of ice around Chu Fengmian. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's body directly rushed into the array above the flame sky lake. Countless spiritual energies kept entangling Chu Fengmian, preventing him from taking another step. Tear! Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. He suddenly waved his hand, which turned into a huge war dragon claw in the air. The formation set up by the four sovereigns was torn apart by the war dragon's claw. The formation set up by the four rulers could not stop Chu Fengmian at this moment and was forcefully torn apart. I'm finally out. After leaving the flame sky lake, Chu Fengmian finally revealed a slight smile. When he looked at Emperor Li and Emperor Bao again, the killing intent in his eyes was no longer concealed. In the flame sky lake, Chu Fengmian still had to divide a large portion of his spiritual energy to resist the surrounding heavenly fire. But now, Chu Fengmian finally rushed out. Now, it was time to settle the score. Not good. He rushed out. Chu Fengmian's speed was too fast. The formation set up above the flame sky lake did not delay Chu Fengmian at all. It was instantly torn apart in front of Chu Fengmian. By the time Emperor Bao and Emperor Li reacted, Chu Fengmian had already rushed out of the flame sky lake with Luo Shi in his arms. In just 3 days, how did this kid become so strong? Emperor Bao looked at Chu Fengmian with deep fear in his eyes. If Chu Fengmian was able to contend with them before, it was because of Chu Fengmian's fortuitous encounter and his countless spiritual weapons. In terms of true strength, Emperor Bao was definitely able to crush Chu Fengmian. But now, Chu Fengmian could rush out of the flame sky lake with his bare hands and kill Emperor Ning with one blow. Even if Emperor Ning was careless, it was enough to prove Chu Fengmian's strength. No, it's not easy to kill this kid now. Let's capture Charm Demon Supreme Lord first. The two of them must have teamed up to capture Charm Demon Supreme Lord and deal with this kid. Emperor Bao thought quickly in his heart. Now that Chu Fengmian rushed out with Luo Shi, it naturally meant that the two of them were already on the same side. According to the rumors, Chu Fengmian's character was very clear about gratitude and grudges. He was very loyal. Now that he had captured Luo Shi, it would be enough to deal with Chu Fengmian. Thinking of this, Emperor Bao did not hesitate and suddenly attacked. The Million Treasure River immediately emerged from his hand. The Million Treasure River was no longer as broken as before. It had already recovered half of its strength. The power of the Million Treasure River descended from the sky. The spiritual energy of the 10,000 spiritual weapons was released at the same time and all of them bombarded towards Chu Fengmian. However, Emperor Bao suddenly turned around and directly grabbed Luo Shi, who was beside Chu Fengmian. He directly grabbed Luo Shi's neck and wanted to capture her. How dare you touch my woman? You're courting death. Chu Fengmian's eyes were extremely cold. His killing intent soared to the sky. Emperor Bao actually wanted to capture Luo Shi to threaten Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian valued friendship the most in his life. Emperor Bao clearly knew this, which was why he made such a decision. This undoubtedly touched Chu Fengmian's reverse scale. What Million Treasure River? Break it all! Chu Fengmian roared angrily. The power of the ice and fire divine body was pushed to the extreme. Suddenly, the two different spiritual energies appeared on Chu Fengmian's fists at the same time. In the flame sky lake, Chu Fengmian used most of his strength to resist the heavenly fire. It was enough to kill Emperor Ning directly. Now that Chu Fengmian used all his strength, the aura on his body was simply terrifying to an indescribable extent. Even the emperors could not be compared to Chu Fengmian. His fist blasted towards the Million Treasure River. The power of ice and fire instantly swept across the entire Million Treasure River. Countless spiritual weapons in the Million Treasure River were directly shattered by the power of ice and fire. The Million Treasure River was directly shattered by Chu Fengmian's fist. The entire Million Treasure River began to shatter inch by inch. In an instant, it disappeared from the sky and turned into the tiniest powder, floating in the air. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's other fist blasted towards Emperor Bao. Chapter 928. Before the punch landed, the terrifying divine power of ice and fire caused Emperor Bao's expression to change drastically. The terrifying power was enough to tear his body apart. Even Emperor Bao, who had reached the peak of the heavenly fate realm, was shocked by the spiritual power. How could this man possess such terrifying power all of a sudden? Ice and fire, these are two completely different spiritual powers. It's impossible for them to appear at the same time. This boy's body actually accommodated these two spiritual powers. Shouldn't they explode when they clash? How could he still control them? Emperor Bao shouted in disbelief. These two diametrically opposed forces were actually integrated by Chu Fengmian's body. This was simply beyond his knowledge and understanding. However, there was no time for him to understand. After the divine power of ice and fire, Chu Fengmian's punch had already landed. Glazed golden body. Emperor Bao suddenly shouted, and a glass-like luster emerged from his body. His skin became crystal clear, and his entire body suddenly turned into a glass-like appearance. Emperor Bao's body no longer looked like a physical body but an existence similar to a spiritual weapon. Emperor Bao's nickname was not because he had the 10,000 treasures river, but because his body had been cultivated into an existence similar to a spirit weapon. A human's physical body naturally could not be compared to a spiritual weapon. Boy, no matter how many fortuitous encounters you have, you must die today. Emperor Bao looked at Chu Fengmian's incoming punch and shouted. He also threw a punch over. His glazed golden body was tougher than a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. He did not believe that he would lose to Chu Fengmian in terms of physical body. Chu Fengmian was now fighting with his physical body, which gave him the best opportunity. From Bao Huang's fist wind, waves of colored glaze radiated out, turning his fist into an existence like colored glaze. It was incomparably hard as it rushed towards Chu Fengmian and threw a punch. You're digging your own grave. Chu Fengmian looked at Emperor Bao's action and his eyes flashed with ridicule. Compared to a spiritual weapon was naturally tougher. Unfortunately, this was only the body of an ordinary martial artist. Now that Chu Fengmian's physical body had been refined by the divine tree, it was definitely tougher than a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. Since Emperor Bao dared to fight Chu Fengmian head-on, he was indeed courting death. Chu Fengmian was not angry. Instead, he laughed. He did not hold back his punch at all and collided with Emperor Bao's fist wind. Boom! When the two fists collided, there was a huge explosion in the air. The collision of their fists was no less powerful than the collision of two heaven-grade spirit artifacts. When Emperor Bao saw that Chu Fengmian didn't dodge and went straight for him, he couldn't help but smile. However, at the moment of collision, Emperor Bao's smile froze. His body felt as if it was being turned upside down by the collision. His internal organs were being swept up by an enormous force and were on the verge of shattering. Before Emperor Bao could stabilize himself, a cracking sound was heard all of a sudden. Emperor Bao's fist wind and his glazed right hand started to shatter gradually. In terms of physical body, even Emperor Bao's glazed golden body was not worth mentioning in front of Chu Fengmian. Bam! Emperor Bao's body was sent flying. His right hand was shattered and disappeared in the air. Countless cracks appeared on his body. His physical body, which was comparable to a sky-grade spirit weapon, was easily beaten into countless cracks by Chu Fengmian. Absolute kill of the heavens and earth. Just as the two forces collided and Emperor Bao's body was sent flying, Emperor Bao's voice suddenly rang out. Emperor Li's voice suddenly sounded. His body was extremely fast, and in his hand, there was a short dagger that was about a foot long. His spiritual energy was integrated into the foot-long dagger. Suddenly, he attacked Chu Fengmian from behind and slashed at Chu Fengmian's body. Sneak attack. Absolute kill. Emperor Li had not made a move just now because he was waiting for the best opportunity. When Chu Fengmian and Emperor Bao collided, all of Chu Fengmian's attention was focused on Emperor Bao. Then, he suddenly made a move. This foot-long dagger condensed Emperor Li's spiritual energy and pierced directly at Chu Fengmian's body. Once it pierced into Chu Fengmian's body, the spiritual energy contained in this foot-long dagger was enough to completely tear Chu Fengmian's body apart. However, this foot-long dagger suddenly stopped when it was less than 3 inches away from Chu Fengmian's body. A thin layer of ice suddenly appeared around Chu Fengmian's body. No matter how sharp this dagger was, it could not pierce through this thin layer of ice and could not advance any further. You think you can kill me with a sneak attack? Chu Fengmian's eyes were extremely cold. He had already expected Emperor Li to launch a sneak attack. Although Emperor Li's strength was not strong, this person was extremely scheming. He would definitely launch a sneak attack when Chu Fengmian was most relaxed. All of this was within Chu Fengmian's expectations. Not good, retreat quickly. After the assassination failed, Emperor Li's eyes revealed a sense of crisis. All of his spiritual energy was condensed on this foot-long dagger. After the assassination failed, he had no strength to contend with Chu Fengmian. Emperor Li's body hurriedly retreated, gradually distancing himself from Chu Fengmian. You still want to escape? Stay here. Chu Fengmian did not even raise his head. With a wave of his hand, an incomparably huge war dragon claw condensed in the air. This war dragon claw was incomparably majestic. The moment it descended from the sky and enveloped Emperor Li's body. The rolling dragon's might firmly suppressed Emperor Li's body. Just this dragon's might alone made Emperor Li somewhat breathless. His face was full of horror. No! Before this roar could finish, the war dragon claw had mercilessly descended. All of Emperor Li's strength could not resist this war dragon claw. His body was directly shattered in an instant. His flesh and blood were directly obliterated, leaving only a cloud of essence blood that was devoured by the divine tree. It was another move. Not only Emperor Ning, but now even Emperor Li was killed in one move in front of Chu Fengmian. Of the 3 emperors, 2 were dead and 1 was injured. Although Luo Shi, who was standing beside Chu Fengmian, knew that Chu Fengmian's current strength was certainly not the same as before, she was still frightened. Chu Fengmian was facing 3 emperors, super powerhouses who dominated the 9 regions. Since when were 3 emperors no different from ants in Chu Fengmian's eyes? They were easily killed by Chu Fengmian as if slaughtering chickens and dogs. Chapter 929. Shocking. Luo Shi, who had witnessed everything with her own eyes, was deeply shocked. If she had not seen it with her own eyes, who would have thought that a great ancestor of the divine martial realm could easily kill an emperor? Emperor Bao, who was the only one left, was dumbfounded. Emperor Li's assassination technique was terrifying to the extreme. 4 or 5 sovereigns had died in his hands. Those emperors did not even have time to react before they were assassinated by Emperor Li. Even though he had a deep understanding of Emperor Li, he had to be extremely careful. However, when Chu Fengmian fought with him, he could easily resolve Emperor Li's assassination. He could even kill Emperor Li directly, not giving him any chance to escape. Oh no, this person's strength can no longer be suppressed. I can only ask the great ancestor to come and kill him. Emperor Bao looked at Chu Fengmian with fear in his eyes. Chu Fengmian had only advanced by 2 levels and reached the divine martial realm, but he already had such terrifying strength. If Chu Fengmian were to enter Heaven's Mandate one day and become a king, wouldn't his strength become even more terrifying? This person must be eliminated. Emperor Bao had made up his mind. He must escape and return to the sect to ask the Great Ancestor to kill Chu Fengmian. Golden Body Reconstruction. Suddenly, countless pills flew out in front of Emperor Bao. There were dozens of pills, all of which were heaven-level spiritual pills. He swallowed all of them in one breath. A huge amount of spiritual energy immediately helped Emperor Bao to reform his shattered lustrous golden body. Let's go! After Emperor Bao reformed his golden body, he did not have any intention to fight against Chu Fengmian. Instead, he turned into a ray of light and escaped. After the 7th day of the House of Storms opening, all the martial artists would be teleported out. 3 days had already passed. After 4 days, they would be teleported out. Emperor Bao's lustrous golden body could be said to be the most difficult to kill among the emperors of the Destiny realm. Fleeing from the House of Storms, Emperor Bao was confident that he could wait until the House of Storms was over. As long as he returned to the 9 regions, he would be able to summon the Great Ancestor of the sect to kill Chu Fengmian. You want to stall for time? When the House of Storms closes, you'll summon your sect's Grand Ancestor to kill me? Seeing Emperor Bao's actions, Chu Fengmian understood what Emperor Bao was thinking. Drag. Behind Emperor Bao were the incomparably large 7 sections. As long as they could delay until they returned to the 9 regions, the supreme ancestors of the 7 sects would definitely be able to kill Chu Fengmian. Emperor Bao's wishful thinking was not bad. Unfortunately, Chu Fengmian would not give him this opportunity. Stop trying to stall for time. Do you really think I can't kill you? If I want to kill you, it will be as easy as slaughtering a chicken or a dog. Looking at Emperor Bao's escaping light, Chu Fengmian sneered. As soon as his voice faded, Chu Fengmian's figure also moved. In just 3 breaths, Chu Fengmian's escaping light suddenly caught up. His escaping light was much faster than Emperor Bao's. Before Emperor Bao could heave a sigh of relief, he realized that Chu Fengmian had already arrived beside him. Damn it! Being forced into a desperate situation, Emperor Bao's face revealed a bit of madness. Since when had he, an Emperor Realm cultivator, been chased by a divine martial ancestor? Boom! The aura on Emperor Bao's body suddenly expanded in an instant. Rolling golden flames burned on his body. The golden flame was burning Emperor Bao's life essence blood. Emperor Bao did not hesitate to burn his blood essence. Now, he was going to make a last desperate attempt. This was already a sure kill move. He was going all out. Even if Emperor Bao defeated Chu Fengmian now, he would definitely die. It could be said that he was going all out. 1,000 treasure sacrifice. Heavenly mandate strike. Emperor Bao seemed to have turned himself into a spiritual weapon. He directly sacrificed himself to the heavens in exchange for unparalleled power. All of his spiritual energy was gathered on his right fist. He threw out a punch. The space of the House of Storms shattered under the terrifying power and started to disperse. This was Emperor Bao's ultimate punch. Under this punch, all living things would be annihilated. Not good. Retreat. Emperor Bao is going all out. Even if we don't kill him now, he'll definitely die in a few days. Luo Shi, who was at the side, felt the terrifying spiritual energy of Emperor Bao and hurriedly said. Emperor Bao, who was burning his blood essence, surpassed the heavenly mandate realm in a short period of time and reached the Paragon realm. The power that he possessed was already on a completely different level compared to before. Even if Chu Fengmian's strength had skyrocketed, it was still unknown who would win against Emperor Bao, who was at the Paragon realm. It's okay. Don't waste these few days. Even if he's struggling, he won't be a match for me. Hearing Luo Shi's reminder, Chu Fengmian sneered. Delay for a few days and wait for the lamp to run out of oil? There was no need for that. Now, Chu Fengmian would directly kill Emperor Bao and shatter all of his hopes. Sword, come. Dang! The ancestral dragon's supreme sword instantly appeared in Chu Fengmian's hand. The moment Chu Fengmian held it in his hand, the ancestral dragon's supreme sword could feel Chu Fengmian's power. It was no longer the same as before. Suddenly, a dragon's roar resounded, celebrating for Chu Fengmian. Let's use this person's blood as an offering to the sword. Breaking the firmament with a sword. Chu Fengmian held the ancestral dragon's supreme sword in his hand, and a soaring sword will erupted from his body. This sharp sword would tear apart some old ancestors who approached it. The power of the sword was condensed to its peak and then fell from the sky, clashing with Emperor Bao's heavenly mandate strike. Kacha! Kacha! When the two forces collided, there wasn't a rumble as expected. Instead, there was a crisp sound. Emperor Bao's heavenly mandate strike that he unleashed after risking his life couldn't even withstand a single blow from Chu Fengmian's sword. All of the spiritual energy was swept up by the sword and was mercilessly devoured by the sword. Emperor Bao's body was sent flying in front of the sword edge. In front of the sword, he was suddenly split into two. Then, all of them began to shatter and disappear in the sky. In a frenzy, Emperor Bao's strength had reached the ultimate realm. However, he was easily destroyed by Chu Fengmian. From the sky, Emperor Bao's figure could no longer be seen, leaving only a pool of blood essence. Collect! Chu Fengmian grabbed with his hand and devoured all of the blood essence left by Emperor Bao. Then, he left without looking back. Chapter 930. In a mountain range of the House of Storms, a man was sitting calmly on top of the mountain range. Beside the man, one side was cold, and the other side was hot. These two spiritual energies were constantly emitted. The surrounding mountain range was divided into two. One side was extremely hot, while the other was extremely cold. This was a strange scene that had never appeared in the House of Storms. This man was Chu Fengmian. 4 days. Chu Fengmian was in this mountain range, motionless, comprehending the magic of the ice and fire divine body. An innate divine body also needed to be developed countless times before one could comprehend its true power. It was the same for Chu Fengmian's ice and fire divine body. In just 4 days, Chu Fengmian had a deeper understanding of the ice and fire divine body. Beside Chu Fengmian, Luo Shi had been waiting quietly. She was also closing her eyes to comprehend the various things in the House of Storms. A battle of life and death was extremely helpful for a martial artist. It was enough to break through and comprehend a new realm. It's about time. The moment the sky above the House of Storms began to tear, Chu Fengmian slowly opened his eyes. 7 days had passed. It was time for the House of Storms to close. Chu Fengmian slowly stood up from the mountain range. At a glance, there was almost no spiritual energy emitted from Chu Fengmian's body. However, he could feel a kind of invisible pressure from it. Although there was no change in Chu Fengmian's realm, he was much more powerful than before he had entered the House of Storms after condensing the ice and fire divine body. The ice and fire divine body is indeed magical. Every time the 5 primal emperors' art forms a divine body, it will become many times stronger. I have only formed 2 of them now. If I were to form all 5 of them, how terrifying would it be? Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. The art of 5 chaos emperors was enough to condense the 5 elements divine body. Once the 5 elements divine body was condensed, it would return to the chaos and condense the chaos divine body. The chaos divine body was an existence that surpassed the celestial divine body. Since the creation of the art of 5 chaos emperors, no one had truly condensed the chaos divine body. If Chu Fengmian could condense it, he would be the first person to walk the path of the art of 5 chaos emperors. He would even surpass the existence who created the art of 5 chaos emperors. Unfortunately, condensing the 5 elements divine body was only a legend, a guess. If Chu Fengmian was able to do so, he would have truly made history. Let's not talk about the difficulties involved. Just the amount of divine stones needed to condense it is simply impossible to find in the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian could not help but sigh. It was impossible to find godstones in the 9 realms. They could only go to the outer realms. They could only be found in the boundless outer space. Luo Shi, you're about to break through to the next level, right? Chu Fengmian said as he looked at Luo Shi, who was slowly waking up. Luo Shi's level was already at the limit of the heart-tempering realm. She was only one step away from entering the destiny realm and becoming a ruler. Now that she had obtained such a large piece of saint-grade spirit stone, in addition to the life and death battle she had experienced in the House of Storms this time, she could not help but feel relieved. With Luo Shi's aptitude, breaking through was no longer a difficult thing. That's right, but I have to return to the Six Paths Demon Gate. Luo Shi looked at Chu Fengmian and suddenly said. If I want to break through, I have to return to the Six Paths Demon Gate. My inheritance comes from the Six Paths Demon Gate. I have to return to the Six Paths Demon Gate and take everything that belongs to me. You want to return to the Six Paths Demon Gate? Chu Fengmian could not help but frown when he heard Luo Shi's words. Luo Shi's return to the Six Paths Demon Gate could be said to be an extremely dangerous matter. Chu Fengmian did not want Luo Shi to take the risk. But what about your situation? Although the Six Paths Demon Gate is dangerous, I have to return. If I don't, I will never be able to break through to the next level. Luo Shi looked at Chu Fengmian with gentleness in her eyes. Don't worry. After all, I'm the Supreme Lord of the Succubus sect. Even if they want to deal with me, it won't be that easy. Once I obtain the inheritance, I will leave immediately and meet up with you. All right. Chu Fengmian thought for a moment and nodded. Luo Shi's strength came from the Succubus sect of the Six Paths Demon Gate. She was different from Chu Fengmian. She had to return to the Nine Paths Demon Gate in order to break through to the next level. I'll leave the Kanglan Immortal Armor to you. If you encounter any danger, you can call for me. I will definitely save you. As Chu Fengmian spoke, he took out the Kanglan Immortal Armor from his empty ring. The Kanglan Immortal Armor was not very useful to Chu Fengmian. Now that he had the protection of the Divine Tree, his body was extremely tough. If even his Divine Tree protection was broken, then the Kanglan Immortal Armor wouldn't be of much use. It was better to give it to Luo Shi so that she could protect herself. The Kanglan Immortal Armor, Luo Shi was pleasantly surprised when she heard Chu Fengmian's words. Especially when she saw Chu Fengmian giving the Kanglan Immortal Armor to her, it was enough to prove how much Chu Fengmian cared about her. Luo Shi did not decline and kept the Kanglan Immortal Armor. She poured a drop of blood essence into it and began to refine it. Gradually, it merged into her body. If she wanted to return to the Six Paths Demon Gate, she would definitely encounter some dangers. With the help of the Kanglan Immortal Armor, it would be much easier. Once the Kanglan Immortal Armor was refined, it would become invisible and hide by Luo Shi's side. It was only when Luo Shi was in danger that he would suddenly appear to help her block the danger. This is the map of the Six Paths Demon Gate. Luo Shi thought for a while and suddenly, a jade talisman was sent into Chu Fengmian's mind. Suddenly, a map appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. This map recorded a small world in the endless void. This was where the Six Paths Demon Gate was located. The Six Paths Demon Gate has been hiding in the endless void all this time. No wonder the people from the 7 major sects couldn't find them. Chu Fengmian was surprised when he saw the map. The lair of the Six Paths Demon Gate was really well hidden. It was hidden in the depths of the void. Without this map, even Chu Fengmian would find it extremely difficult to search for them. You have to be careful. The Demon Emperor will also participate in the 9 Regions Genius Battle. The Demon Emperor's strength is extraordinarily terrifying. You have to be extremely careful. Luo Shi reminded Chu Fengmian before she left. Then, the two of them were sent out of the Kanglan Palace and flew in 2 different directions. Chapter 931. I didn't expect that even the Demon Emperor would want to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. In the Central Region, Chu Fengmian left the House of Storms and continued to travel through the Central Region. Although the 9 Regions Genius Battle was a grand event, someone like the Demon Emperor shouldn't be participating in it. After all, the Demon Emperor had a lofty status. Given his status, he shouldn't be bothered to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. One of the reasons why the Nine Regions Genius Tournament was able to attract so many warriors to participate was because of the outstanding performance of the Nine Regions Genius Tournament. It was very likely that the 7 great sects would extend an olive branch to them and try to rope them in. To most cultivators, this was something they could only dream of. Therefore, most of the martialists who participated in the Nine Regions Genius Tournament had this intention. They wanted to display their skills and make a name for themselves in the Nine Regions Genius Tournament. As for the other reason, it was because the champion of the Nine Regions Genius Battle would obtain a treasure. This treasure was jointly given out by the 7 great sections. In the 9 regions, it was definitely a treasure that countless patriarchs and sovereigns would fight over. There would also be many martialists who would come for this treasure. However, these 2 points did not have much meaning to the Demon Emperor. The first was to join one of the 7 great sections. How was that possible for the Demon Emperor? The second was to obtain the final treasure of the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Given the Demon Emperor's status, he had all kinds of treasures. Even if it was something that other sovereigns coveted, it was nothing to the Demon Emperor. He had the entire 6 Paths Demon sect under his control, so he could obtain any treasure he wanted. Unless, of course, the treasures from the 9 Regions Geniuses battle were extraordinary. Let's go take a look first. It would be a good thing if I could exchange blows with the Demon Emperor. Chu Fengmian sneered. Previously, Chu Fengmian had exchanged blows with the Demon Emperor in the returning Ruins Heaven. At that time, Chu Fengmian had taken advantage of the situation. He had killed the Battle Demon Supremacy and the Lone Demon Supremacy in the hands of the Demon Emperor. However, Chu Fengmian had only fought with a doppelganger of the Demon Emperor. In terms of strength, that doppelganger had surpassed Chu Fengmian. This was because they had fought in the Heavenly Feather Divine region. As the master of the Heavenly Feather Palace, Chu Fengmian had a natural advantage in the Heavenly Feather Divine region. Even so, Chu Fengmian was barely able to fight the Devil Emperor's clone. The Devil Emperor had retreated because Chu Fengmian was in the Heavenly Feather Godland. There was no way he could kill Chu Fengmian. Otherwise, if the battle continued, Chu Fengmian would be the one to lose. Although Chu Fengmian wouldn't die, he would lose without a doubt. However, things would be different if Chu Fengmian were to fight the Demon Emperor again. Here we go. Chu Fengmian had condensed the Ice-Fire Divine Body, and his strength had skyrocketed. Even if he encountered the Devil Emperor, Chu Fengmian would defeat him sooner or later. The Demon Monarch of the 6 Paths Demon Gate was a peerless genius. Chu Fengmian was determined to trample him under his feet. Looks like this 9 Regions Genius battle won't be boring. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. His figure continued to fly in the middle region. Soon, the scenery around him started to become familiar. Is this the ancient city of Ningzhou? Unknowingly, Chu Fengmian came to the ancient city of Ningzhou. The last time Chu Fengmian came from the northern region, he came directly to the ancient city of Ningzhou. This time, he came again. There seems to be a teleportation formation of the ancient Colosseum in the ancient city of Ningzhou. It can directly go to the ancient Colosseum. Chu Fengmian recalled that Gu Jin, the second daughter of the Gu family, seemed to have told Chu Fengmian this at that time. Let's go and take a look. Thinking of this, Chu Fengmian's body moved and directly fell into the ancient city of Ningzhou. The layers of restrictions set up in the ancient city of Ningzhou were enough to stop an ordinary emperor. However, in front of Chu Fengmian, they were treated as nothing. He didn't care about these restrictions at all and swaggered in. None of the restrictions could detect Chu Fengmian's presence and trigger to stop him. Senior, welcome to the Gu family. A voice suddenly sounded from Chu Fengmian's side. This voice was slightly surprised, but it was full of politeness. Chu Fengmian silently fell into the Gu family's residence in the ancient city of Ningzhou. It wasn't until Chu Fengmian showed up that a strand of spiritual awareness suddenly sensed his existence. Patriarch Gu, we haven't seen each other for half a month. Don't you remember me? Chu Fengmian heard this voice and said with a smile. The owner of this voice was the patriarch of the Gu family. This voice, you're Chu Fengmian? When the patriarch of the Gu family heard Chu Fengmian's words, he was stunned at first, but then he realized that the voice seemed to be somewhat familiar. When he heard Chu Fengmian call himself Chu Fengmian, he immediately thought of Chu Fengmian's identity. He couldn't hide the surprise in his voice. He suddenly appeared and looked at Chu Fengmian as if he had seen a ghost. "Young Master Chu, when did you return to the ancient city of Ningzhou?" The patriarch of the Gu family asked, unable to hide his surprise. The last time he saw Chu Fengmian, he felt the terror of Chu Fengmian's strength. However, with his realm, it was enough to suppress Chu Fengmian. This time, Chu Fengmian actually came to the Gu family without a sound. Even the patriarch of the Gu family did not notice Chu Fengmian's trace. Chu Fengmian's strength was not inferior to a ruler's. Therefore, when the patriarch of the Gu family suddenly noticed that someone had come to their residence, he thought that a ruler had arrived. He did not expect that person to be Chu Fengmian. "I just came here. It's on the way," Chu Fengmian said casually. "The people from the 6 demonic sects shouldn't be attacking the ancient city of Ningzhou anymore, right? The people from the 6 demonic sects have already left the surroundings of the ancient city of Ningzhou." The patriarch of the Gu family looked at Chu Fengmian for a long time before he asked in surprise. "Young Master Chu, your realm?" "Of course, I've already broken through." "Thank you, Patriarch Gu. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to collect all the sacred herbs. It's all thanks to that sacred pill that I finally broke through," Chu Fengmian said with a smile. His current realm was no longer something that the patriarch of the Gu family could see. No matter how the patriarch of the Gu family looked, Chu Fengmian's realm was only nothingness. Chu Fengmian's realm was still on the 5th step of the life and death steps, which was the God Martial realm, which was slightly lower than the patriarch of the Gu family's heart-refining realm. However, Chu Fengmian's true strength was enough to easily kill a ruler. Even a ruler could not see Chu Fengmian's realm, let alone the patriarch of the Gu family. Chapter 932. What terrifying strength! I didn't expect this person to have such terrifying strength after just breaking through the life and death stage. The Gu clan head felt the terrifying aura emitted from Chu Fengmian's body and couldn't help but exclaim. Although Chu Fengmian's body didn't emit much terrifying spiritual energy, he could feel an invisible pressure just by standing beside him. Even without moving, it was enough to make the Gu clan head feel an invisible pressure. This was simply far beyond the Gu clan head's level. I wonder what level young Master Chu's current strength has reached. The Gu clan head suddenly asked. Chu Fengmian was a little surprised by the Gu clan head's question, but he still replied. "Please be careful, Gu clan head." The instant he opened his mouth, Chu Fengmian faintly mobilized his spiritual energy, turning it into a terrifying pressure that directly enveloped the Gu clan head. The Gu clan head's mind suddenly turned blank under this pressure, and his face was filled with fear. Although Chu Fengmian withdrew his pressure in an instant, it was still enough to make the Gu clan head stunned for a moment. How terrifying! This person's strength has really reached a terrifying level. This pressure is no different from an emperor's. The Gu clan head was shocked. Just this pressure alone was enough to make him unable to resist. The Gu clan head was one of the most powerful figures among the ancestors. Just his pressure alone was enough to make him unable to resist. Only a ruler would be able to do all of this. If this person were to take action, it might be enough to save Jian'er this time, but... The Gu clan head sighed inwardly, and his eyes revealed a bit of hesitation. "Gu clan head, what trouble have you encountered?" Chu Fengmian remained calm and suddenly thought of something. "Where's Miss Jian? Why isn't she in Ning Province Ancient City?" When Chu Fengmian arrived at Ning Province Ancient City, he had already discovered that Gu Jian wasn't there. Originally, Chu Fengmian didn't think much of it. But now, looking at the Gu clan head's appearance, there must be some secrets behind it. This trouble is related to Jian'er. The head of the Gu family looked at Chu Fengmian and slowly opened his mouth. A few days ago, a young master of the Tianjian sect suddenly came to the ancient city of Ningzhou. He wanted to purchase a batch of elixirs, but he suddenly saw Jin and wanted to marry her as his concubine. Oh? Isn't this a good thing? Why is the Gu family head unhappy? Chu Fengmian was slightly surprised when he heard the Gu family head's words. He was a young master of the Tianjin sect. Anyone who could become a young master of the Tianjin sect was at least one of the top geniuses of the younger generation in the Tianjin sect. With the Gu family's status, if Gu Jin married this young master, it would naturally rise with the tide. But now, looking at the Gu family head's intentions, it didn't seem to be the case. Young Master Chu, you might not know this, but that young master has taken in countless concubines. He has over 1,000 wives and concubines. Furthermore, what he cultivates is a type of cultivation Dao. The patriarch of the Gu clan said with a troubled expression. That young master only wants to take Jiner's cultivation Dao. In less than 3 months, Jiner will die. A few days ago, that young master has already sent a betrothal gift. He said that he will take Jiner away in 2 days. This old man is incompetent, so I can only send Jiner to another city to hide for a while. The cultivation Dao. People of the Tianjin sect actually cultivate this kind of demonic cultivation Dao. After hearing the Gu family head's words, Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a bit of coldness. The cultivation Dao was extremely rare in the current 9 regions, but Chu Fengmian knew that it was a type of demonic cultivation Dao. Some male warriors cultivated by taking other women's cultivation Dao for their own use. The most ruthless part was that after the cultivation Dao was taken, the woman would be lucky enough to have half a life left. She would be no different from an ordinary person. If the cultivation Dao was more ruthless, she would directly die. This was an out-and-out demonic cultivation Dao. Chu Fengmian did not expect that the Tianjin sect, which prided itself on the righteous path, actually had a disciple who cultivated this kind of demonic cultivation Dao. Since I've come to this ancient city of Ningzhou, it's fate. I won't let Miss Gu Jin be taken by that young master. Chu Fengmian suddenly opened his mouth. Who is that young master? What's his background? That young master is called Jianwang. He's a genius of the Tianjin sect. At such a young age, he has already reached the heart-refining realm. The patriarch of the Gu clan hurriedly said. Although this person is not easy to deal with, this old man can deal with him for a while. However, his master is a supreme elder of the Tianjin sect. He's an emperor, Emperor Yan. An Emperor Yan had actually appeared. This Jianwang's background was indeed extraordinary. The corner of Chu Fengmian's mouth curled into a cold smile. Very good. Now, in order for his divine tree to grow, it needed the essence and blood of an emperor. Originally, Chu Fengmian did not know where to get the essence and blood of emperors. Now, it seemed that one by one, they had delivered themselves to his doorstep. I see. Patriarch Gu, you should go and bring Miss Gu Jin back. Chu Fengmian looked at the patriarch of the Gu clan and said calmly. But, I heard that Emperor Yan, who is behind Jianwang, will come personally. The patriarch of the Gu clan said nervously. So what? He's just an Emperor Yan. Since he's here, I'll offer his blood to my sword. Chu Fengmian said casually. Go ahead. A mere Emperor Yan is not worthy of my attention. A mere Emperor Yan is not worthy of my attention. Hearing Chu Fengmian's arrogant words, the patriarch of the Gu clan did not dare to refute. Chu Fengmian's aura was too terrifying. So much so that he did not even have the courage to refute Chu Fengmian's words. Okay, I'll go and call Jiner back. The patriarch of the Gu clan hurriedly threw out a jade talisman. The two of them sat in the palace. Not long after, a stream of light landed steadily in the Gu clan. It was Gu Jin. The last time they met, Gu Jin's strength had improved, reaching the 9th level of life and death realm. In this way, she was not far from breaking through the life and death steps and becoming a first-generation old ancestor. Young Master Chu. Gu Jin came from afar and saw Chu Fengmian. Feeling the terrifying aura of Chu Fengmian, she could not help but feel a little fearful. The last time she saw Chu Fengmian, she was shocked by his strength. Today, she saw that Chu Fengmian's strength was much more terrifying than the last time she came to Ning Province Ancient City. Gu Jin, you actually came back. It seems like you've finally decided to marry young Master Jian. Chapter 933. The figure of a young man slowly walked in from outside the palace. It was Gu Quan, whom he had met once in the Ning region ancient city. Gu Quan, what are you doing here? Seeing Gu Quan's arrival, the Gu family head's eyes flashed with anger. This time, young Master Jian wanted to marry Gu Jin, and this was related to Gu Quan. Although he was the Gu family head, he could not control the entire Gu family. Gu Quan was nurtured by the elders of the Gu family. Even if he was angry, he could not kill Gu Quan. Family head, I'm just here to give you a piece of advice. Young Master Jian will be here today to propose marriage. Family head and Gu Jin, please serve him well. Gu Quan glanced to the side and saw Chu Fengmian standing there. Gu Quan said coldly. Also, this is an internal matter of our Gu family. Family head, please do not bring in outsiders to prevent young Master Jian from misunderstanding. 3 elders. As Gu Quan spoke, 3 old men slowly walked in from outside and stood behind Gu Quan. Those 3 old men were all in the heart refinement realm. Although they were a bit inferior to the Gu family's head, when the 3 of them joined hands, their strength greatly surpassed the Gu family's head. Not good, young Master Chu. These 3 are the grand elders of our Gu family. They are supporters of Gu Quan. Gu Jin quietly transmitted her voice to Chu Fengmian. She looked a little nervous. 3 grand elders, why have you come here? When the head of the Gu clan saw the appearance of the 3 grand elders, his eyes revealed some fear as he spoke. We're just here to remind family head not to do anything stupid. An old man slowly said. He looked at Chu Fengmian and sized him up for a moment before he suddenly spoke. Lad, who are you? Why are you in the Gu family? I'm just a friend of Miss Gu Jin. I'm just passing by the Gu family. Chu Fengmian said casually. There was no expression in his eyes. Friend? I don't think so. You saved Gu Jin this time and came to our Gu family to ask for some benefits. That's already written off. Our Gu family has nothing to do with you. When Gu Quan heard Chu Fengmian's words, he suddenly sneered loudly. Today's matter is an internal affair of the Gu clan. As an outsider, you have no right to interfere. Elders, I suspect that this man is colluding with the 6 Paths Demon Gate. He must be plotting against the Gu clan. The family head and Miss Gu Jin have been deceived by him. Elders, please subdue him and lock him up in the prison before interrogating him. That's right. This kid's background is unknown. He doesn't look like someone from our Ningzhou ancient city. He must be plotting something against our Gu family. One of the grand elders suddenly spoke. Let's capture him first. When the time comes, I'll leave it to young Master Jian. Good. Brat, since you don't want to explain yourself, then we'll capture you and interrogate you properly. Attack. The moment the 3 grand elders spoke, they attacked at the same time. 3 withered arms suddenly grabbed at Chu Fengmian. The 3 arms stacked on top of each other as their strength merged into one. They grabbed the space around Chu Fengmian. They wanted to capture Chu Fengmian's body and seal all of his spiritual energy. Young Master Chu, this is bad. This is our Gu clan's combined attack technique. The 3 grand elders are enough to capture an ordinary Emperor realm expert. Gu Jin said nervously when she saw the 3 grand elders taking action. However, before she could finish her words, the change in the scene left her dumbfounded. 3 old men, are you courting death? Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold. Chu Fengmian was too lazy to get involved in the internal affairs of the Gu clan. However, since they had set their sights on Chu Fengmian, they were courting death. What kind of combined attack technique is this? Capturing an Emperor realm expert? All of you, break! Chu Fengmian waved his sleeves and a surge of spiritual energy rushed out. A dragon's roar suddenly resounded. In the face of this dragon roar, the 3 withered arms were all sent flying. With a cracking sound, all of them broke apart. Chu Fengmian did not use any power for this attack. Just the strength of his physical body was enough to directly break through the combined attack of the 3 grand elders of the Gu clan. Gu Quan, who was standing at the side, did not expect this to happen. He had suffered a loss at Chu Fengmian's hands once. This time, he called the 3 elders over to give Chu Fengmian a show of strength and teach him a lesson. However, he did not expect the 3 grand elders to be so weak in front of Chu Fengmian. Just one move was enough to break the 3 grand elders' combined attack. Not good. Quickly inform young Master Jian. This person must be a spy from the 6 Paths Demon sect. He must be plotting something against the Gu clan. Young Master Jian, please come quickly and kill this man. One of the grand elders shouted in the sky. Die! Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold as he grabbed the grand elder's neck. The grand elder, who was full of arrogance just a moment ago, was now being choked by Chu Fengmian as if he was a chicken. He was almost out of breath. Young Master Chu, the Gu clan master, looked at Chu Fengmian as if he wanted to plead for mercy. However, Chu Fengmian took the initiative and spoke coldly. These pieces of trash are the cancer of the Gu clan. They will only cause trouble if they stay in the Gu clan. Today, they must die. You don't have to care about them, Gu clan master. Chu Fengmian's words revealed a deep killing intent. Since these people dared to provoke Chu Fengmian, it was useless for anyone to plead for mercy. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the 3 grand elders panicked. However, they still did not believe that Chu Fengmian dared to kill them. Boy, we are now young Master Jian's men. If you dare to kill us, young Master Jian will not let you go. Let us go now. When young Master Jian comes, kneel down and apologize. This is your only chance to live. A grand elder even threatened Chu Fengmian in an arrogant manner. However, before he could finish his arrogant words, he saw Chu Fengmian's palm move. Abruptly, that supreme elder was directly crushed by Chu Fengmian's palm. Ah! Only a miserable scream was left in the sky. The grand elder was crushed to death by Chu Fengmian's hand. Chapter 934. And the 2 of you, you must die too. After killing one of their grand elders, Chu Fengmian's killing intent grew even stronger. When he killed people, he had always cut the weeds and eliminated the roots. He had never left any trace of mercy. The head of the Gu family wanted to say something, but when he saw the ruthless killing intent in Chu Fengmian's eyes, he did not dare to open his mouth again. Head of the family. Head of the family, save us. The remaining 2 grand elders did not dare to doubt Chu Fengmian's words after seeing him crush one of their grand elders to death with their own eyes. Chu Fengmian had always said that he would kill without any hesitation. No one could stop him from killing the people he wanted to kill. Young Master Chu, Senior Chu, please let us go. We are willing to acknowledge you as our master and submit to you. The 2 grand elders hurriedly begged Chu Fengmian when they saw that begging the head of the Gu family was useless. Chu Fengmian's expression was as cold as before. You want to beg for mercy now? It's too late. Go to hell. Chu Fengmian said ruthlessly. This time, he announced the death of the 2 grand elders. Chu Fengmian's palm fell mercilessly. The bodies of the 2 grand elders began to swell crazily as if they were about to explode. Ah! Kid! Just you wait, young Master Jian will definitely not let you go. Before they died, the 2 of them were still madly cursing. Young Master Jian? Soon, you will be able to meet young Master Jian. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a cold smile. Young Master Jian, you will all die. These 3 old fellows are dead. Consider it as cleaning up the Gu family. After killing the 3 grand elders, Chu Fengmian slowly descended into the palace. The head of the Gu family could not help but smile bitterly when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. Thank you, young Master Chu. Don't worry. I have killed so many people from the Gu family. Of course, I will give you some compensation. Gu Jin, come here. Chu Fengmian looked at the head of the Gu family and suddenly laughed. He said to Gu Jin. Yes. Upon hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Gu Jin walked over to Chu Fengmian's side without hesitation. There was a ball of pure essence blood in Chu Fengmian's palm. It was the essence blood of the 3 Grand Elders. A drop of Chu Fengmian's own essence blood was added to it, causing it to shine with a dazzling golden light. I've killed 3 of your Gu family's ancestors. Now, I'll return one to you. As Chu Fengmian spoke, he suddenly threw a palm strike at Gu Jin. However, this palm strike did not pose any threat. Instead, the essence blood in his palm was directly injected into Gu Jin's body. The aura of the ancient brocade body started to swell frantically. His entire body was undergoing earth-shattering changes due to the refinement of the essence blood. Transcend life and death. In Gu Jin's body, a shackle that had been restraining her was suddenly released. It was the bottleneck that transcended life and death. Gu Jin's cultivation level suddenly surpassed the life and death steps, and continued to climb until he reached the 4th step of the life and death steps, the unblemished realm. Only then did his aura stabilize. With a wave of his hand, Gu Jin's cultivation level underwent earth-shattering changes. I've surpassed the life and death steps and become an ancestor? Gu Jin felt the changes in his body and simply could not believe it. In the blink of an eye, it was enough to make a life and death realm martial artist directly become an ancestor. Moreover, it directly reached the unblemished realm. This was simply the kind of thing that could only be done by supreme ancestors in the legends. But now, it was done in front of everyone alive. What kind of technique is this? What level has this person's strength reached? Gu Jin. Seeing this scene, the Gu family's patriarch's heart was in a perilous situation. His cultivation level was much higher than Gu Jin's, and he was also much more knowledgeable. Naturally, he knew how terrifying the technique was to be able to achieve this. Not to mention some emperors, even a quasi-supreme ancestor could not do it. Only a supreme ancestor who had truly stepped into the immortal realm could do all this. Currently, Chu Fengmian's cultivation level was not even at the emperor realm, but his technique was comparable to that of a supreme ancestor. This was definitely something to marvel at. Especially when the Gu family's patriarch transcended the life and death steps, it was extremely difficult. No one knew how many methods he had to use to achieve all this. But now, Gu Jin did it with ease. This person can only be roped in. Now, even the 7 major sects can't deal with him. As long as we wait for him to grow, he may even step into the peak of the 9 regions. The Gu family's patriarch's eyes flickered. He secretly made up his mind that no matter what, he would stand on Chu Fengmian's side. Not only because of Chu Fengmian's current strength, but also because of Chu Fengmian's terrifying growth. In just half a month, the Gu family's patriarch had witnessed Chu Fengmian's growth with his own eyes. He did not even dare to think about how far Chu Fengmian could go in the future. Therefore, no matter what, he had to stand on Chu Fengmian's side. Gu family's patriarch, how is it? Chu Fengmian sat on the chair, drinking tea by himself, and said with a smile. Thank you, young Master Chu. Our Gu clan will never forget young Master Chu's kindness. As long as young Master Chu has any instructions in the future, as long as young Master Chu passes the word, our Gu clan will definitely go through water and tread on fire without hesitation. The Gu family's patriarch hurriedly said, almost kneeling down in front of Chu Fengmian. Seeing the Gu family's patriarch's performance, Chu Fengmian's heart was extremely satisfied. Although for the current Chu Fengmian, there was indeed no need for the Gu family's help. But whether Chu Fengmian needed it or not was one thing, whether they were willing to do it or not was another. Gu Jin, your current realm is still unstable. Once you stabilize it, it will be very easy to break through. Chu Fengmian looked at Gu Jin and said. If Chu Fengmian was willing, he could directly help Gu Jin break through to the 6th step of the life and death steps, the heart-refining realm. With the blood essence of 3 great ancestors in the heart-refining realm and a drop of Chu Fengmian's blood essence, it was naturally easy to do all of this. Chu Fengmian did not do so. he only laid a stable foundation for Gu Jin, although he was still a little inferior to those true monstrous geniuses. However, compared to most of the disciples of the 7 great sects, Gu Jin's aptitude was one level higher. It was not impossible for him to step into the Emperor realm in the future. Yes, Gu Jin is willing to follow young master for the rest of his life. Gu Jin looked at Chu Fengmian and directly knelt on the ground, saying respectfully, "All right, get up." Chu Fengmian waved his hand and brought Gu Jin up. Then, he pointed at Gu Quan, who was already frightened, and said coldly, Chapter 935. Yes, sir. Gu Jin looked at Gu Quan, who had been sealed by his spiritual power and could not escape. Her eyes were full of killing intent. Whether it was the dangers she encountered when she went to kill the blood sword demon Venerable, or this time, she was forced to marry young Master Jian. It was all Gu Quan's doing. Looking at Gu Quan, Gu Jin did not hesitate at all. She suddenly cut off Gu Quan's head with her sword, and then smashed Gu Quan's body with her palm. After doing all this, Chu Fengmian felt that Gu Jin's aura had stabilized a lot. She was indescribably happy. All her opponents had died in her hands. For any martial artist, it was a joyous thing to die in her own hands. Gu family head, young Master Jian should be here soon. Clean up and lure him in first. Then, I'll deal with him. Chu Fengmian said calmly to Gu family head beside her. Yes. The head of the Gu family hurriedly cleaned up the mess at the scene. Now, he no longer had any doubts about Chu Fengmian's strength. So what if he was an emperor? With Chu Fengmian's current means that were comparable to Ancestor Wu, dealing with a few emperors would not be easy. 2 hours later. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure appeared in the sky above Ningzhou ancient city. Then, the space was directly torn apart. From this torn space, 2 figures slowly walked out. These 2 figures were an old man and a young man. The young man was handsome, but his eyes were as vicious as snakes and scorpions. These 2 people were young Master Jian, Jian Zongjie, and the person behind him, his master, Emperor Yan. The 2 of them directly descended. When the 2 of them arrived at Ningzhou ancient city, they did not pay attention to the restrictions at all. Instead, Emperor Yan directly took action and tore the restrictions at Ningzhou ancient city apart with a flick of his finger. This allowed the 2 of them to step into Ningzhou ancient city. Ningzhou ancient city. It's a pity that the Gu family occupied such a city. Jian Zongjie looked at the bustling Ningzhou ancient city below and sneered. This time, I'm going to marry the most outstanding girl in the Gu family. As a concubine, it's their great fortune. If the Gu family knows what's good for them, they should submit to me. I didn't expect the Gu family head to be so stubborn and still want to resist me. I'm sorry to trouble Master this time. A mere Gu family, who doesn't even have an emperor, dares to resist our Tianjian sect. Looks like anyone who dares to challenge our 7 sects. The Smoke Emperor, who was standing beside Jian Zongjie, said coldly as he surveyed his surroundings. Today, I have personally come here. If the Gu family does not give me an explanation, this matter will not end here. Master, don't be angry. When we arrive at the Gu clan, we will naturally have a way to take over the Gu clan. The Gu clan occupies the ancient city of Ning province and is extremely wealthy. If we obtain the Gu clan's wealth, we will be able to strengthen our sect. Jian Zongjie said with a laugh. The Gu family doesn't deserve such an ancient city of Ningzhou. The 2 figures paused in the air for a moment, before directly descending into the Gu clan. At the same time, from the Gu clan, an enormous pressure instantly enveloped them. The moment the countless disciples of the Gu family felt this pressure, they all knelt down on the ground and started trembling. A bunch of trash. Jian Zongjie glared at the disciples of the Gu family and roared. Gu family head, come out and meet us. Young Master Jian is here. You must be Senior Emperor Yan. Not long later, the head of the Gu clan flew out. Seeing the 2 of them, he respectfully opened his mouth and spoke. The 2 of you, please withdraw your oppressive might. My Gu family's disciples are weak and cannot withstand such oppressive might. Seeing the Gu family head being so respectful, Jianzongjie and Emperor Yan retracted their pressure. When Jianzongjie saw that only the head of the Gu clan had appeared, he could not help but frown as he spoke. "Where's Miss Gu Jin? Why isn't she here?" Jin knew about young Master Jian's arrival and hurriedly arranged a banquet in the palace. "Please forgive her for not being able to receive you," the Gu family head said without batting an eyelid. "Please come to one of the palaces. Our Gu clan has already prepared a banquet and is waiting for the two of you to take your seats." "All right." Jianzongjie and Emperor Yan nodded their heads and followed the Gu family head into the palace. In the palace, Chu Fengmian was already seated at the banquet table, drinking tea quietly. Even when he saw Jianzongjie and the Smoke Emperor arrive, Chu Fengmian's expression did not change at all. He continued to drink his tea leisurely. Jianzongjie and the Yan Emperor both looked at Chu Fengmian, who was an anomaly. Their eyes were filled with hostility. Jianzongjie asked unhappily, "Gu family head, who is this person? Why is there someone else at the banquet today?" "Oh, this is a young disciple of the Gu family. He is inexperienced and does not know who you are. Please forgive him." The head of the Gu clan slowly opened his mouth and said, "Young Master Jin has been waiting for a long time. Please take a seat." Jianzongjie and Emperor Yan nodded their heads when they heard this. They ignored Chu Fengmian and sat down at the banquet table. To the two of them, a mere ancestor of the god martial realm was no different from an ant. They would not take it to heart. "Patriarch Gu, are you looking down on our heavenly sword sect by making all sorts of excuses to stop me? Or are you saying that I, Jianzongjie, am not good enough for your daughter?" Jianzongjie suddenly looked at the head of the Gu clan after he sat down and suddenly opened his mouth to speak. "This time around, my master has personally come not only for the sake of this marriage proposal. Instead, he has a matter that he wishes to discuss with the Gu family's head. May I know the reason why the Emperor Yan is here?" The patriarch of the Gu clan pretended to be terrified as he hurriedly asked. The Yan Emperor spoke slowly. His voice was extremely old, but his tone was like an order. There was no difference between him and Lin Fan. "It's simple. I want the Gu family to join our Tianjin sect. From now on, Ningzhou City will be under the control of our Tianjin sect. Now that the 6 demonic sects have suddenly appeared in the 9 regions, everyone is panicking. Many cities have been taken over by them. Although the ancient city of Ningzhou is not in danger yet, we have to take precautions. Therefore, all the cities will be controlled by the 7 great sects, including the ancient city of Ningzhou." Chapter 936. Emperor Yan's words didn't sound so harsh on the phone. But in reality, he wanted the Gu family to hand over the ancient city of Ningzhou. The ancient city of Ningzhou was the foundation of the Gu family. This was no different from a bandit's behavior. If the Gu family lost the ancient city of Ningzhou, the decline of the Gu family would be inevitable. The more the Gu family heard Emperor Yan's words, the colder the expression of the Gu family became. At this moment, it was extremely gloomy. However, he didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at Chu Fengmian. Jianzongjie and Emperor Yan were also looking at the Gu family's master with cold smiles, waiting for his answer. When did the people of the Tianjin sect become a bunch of bandits? It seems that after so many years, the nature of the Tianjin sect hasn't changed. They are still a bunch of bandits. In this silent place, a calm voice suddenly broke the silence. This voice didn't belong to the Gu family's master. It belonged to Chu Fengmian, who had been sitting at the side and drinking tea. Gu Jin stood beside Chu Fengmian, calmly serving Chu Fengmian tea. "Brat, who are you? A mere Gu clan disciple, what qualifications do you have to speak to us? Get out!" Jianzongjie shouted angrily when he heard Chu Fengmian speak. In his opinion, Chu Fengmian was just a disciple of the Gu family. He didn't even have the right to talk to him. Jianwang shouted angrily at the Gu family's master. Gu family's master, it seems that the Gu family really wants to become the enemy of the Tianjin sect. Let's throw this arrogant brat out first before we can continue our discussion. The Gu family's master remained silent when he heard Jianwang's words. He didn't seem to want to teach Chu Fengmian a lesson. He just stood quietly at the side. At this moment, there was no need for him to speak. Become the enemy of the Tianjin sect? What does it matter? Chu Fengmian shook his head. The number of Sky Sword sect disciples that he had killed was almost uncountable. He had even killed a ruler of the Sky Sword sect. This sentence was said casually. It was as if he didn't care at all. Where did this arrogant brat come from? Speaking such arrogant words. How dare you say that you want to make an enemy out of the Tianjin sect in front of me? Very well. If I don't kill a few ants, people nowadays really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Jianwang was furious when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. Since when did anyone dare to challenge the authority of the Tianjin sect? Especially an ancestor of the divine martial layer. In his eyes, the ancestor of the divine martial layer was nothing more than an ant. Impudent. Kneel. The spiritual power in Jianwang's body suddenly erupted, and he suddenly pressed his palm towards Chu Fengmian. This tyrannical force pressed on Chu Fengmian's body, forcing him to kneel on the ground. With his strength, he could be said to be invincible among warriors of the same realm. He simply didn't put Chu Fengmian in his eyes when dealing with a warrior of the divine martial realm. However, when this spiritual power bombarded Chu Fengmian, it seemed to suddenly disappear. Chu Fengmian drank his tea casually. When he finished drinking his tea, Chu Fengmian slowly stood up. His eyes flashed with coldness. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I think it's you who dares to be arrogant in front of me. Chu Fengmian suddenly laughed. He moved his hand slightly and scattered all of Jianwang's spiritual power around him, bombarding Jianwang's chest. Puff! Jianwang's chest was bombarded on the spot. He took several steps back and spat out a mouthful of essence blood. His face was deathly pale. His eyes were full of disbelief. Kneel! Chu Fengmian waved his hand, and endless pressure enveloped Jianwang's body. Suddenly, Jianwang's internal organs were almost crushed by this terrifying pressure. Even his knees went soft. He couldn't bear the pressure and almost knelt on the ground. However, at this moment, a surge of spiritual power suddenly blocked in front of Jianwang and dissolved his spiritual power. The person who made this move was Emperor Yan, who was sitting at the side. In an instant, he appeared in front of Jianwang and blocked all of Chu Fengmian's spiritual power. Junior, aren't you a little too ruthless? How dare you make a move in front of me? It seems like you're an expert hired by the Gu family. Unfortunately, an ancestor who isn't even an emperor is just an ant no matter how strong he is. Emperor Yan looked at Chu Fengmian and said slowly. Even he couldn't see through Chu Fengmian's current strength. However, there wasn't a trace of destiny's aura on Chu Fengmian's body. This meant that Chu Fengmian had yet to step into the destiny realm and become an emperor. An ancestor, no matter how strong he was nothing in front of an emperor. Seeing that you have good potential, kneel down. As my slave, I can spare you this time. Emperor Yan looked at Chu Fengmian and said calmly. Hearing Emperor Yan's words, Chu Fengmian almost laughed out loud. It seemed like Jianwang didn't learn to be so arrogant from others. This Emperor Yan was even more arrogant. Once he made a move, he asked people to kneel down and submit. An old man like you still dares to speak so arrogantly. Emperor Yan? Today, I made you unable to become an emperor and turned you into a piece of trash. How dare you ask me to kneel down? Break! Chu Fengmian laughed loudly. The aura on his body rose rapidly. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and slapped Emperor Yan across the face. Chu Fengmian slapped Emperor Yan across the face. Slap! This crisp sound suddenly rang out in the palace. The Gu family's head and Gu Jing looked at this scene with their mouths agape. Emperor Yan was an emperor. Now, he had been slapped by Chu Fengmian. This was already a form of humiliation. As an emperor, he had an extremely high status in the Tianjin sect. When had the Emperor Yan, who was revered by tens of thousands, ever been humiliated like this? Little bastard, you're courting death. Emperor Yan was so angry that his hair stood on end. A rainbow-colored gourd suddenly appeared in his hand and he opened it. From the rainbow-colored gourd, clouds of rainbow-colored smoke drifted out. This is the rainbow-colored god-slaying smoke. Any martial artist who is trapped in it will die without a doubt. However, little bastard, I won't let you die so quickly. I will torture you and make you beg for death. Emperor Yan roared angrily as he watched Chu Fengmian fall into the rainbow-colored god-slaying smoke. However, before he could finish his words, another shadow suddenly appeared from the rainbow-colored god-slaying smoke. Another slap was delivered. Chapter 937. The two slaps caused Emperor Yan's face to swell up like a pig's head. Emperor Yan wanted to gather his spiritual energy and recover quickly. However, no matter how hard he tried, the two slaps remained on his face and could not be healed. This humiliation was more painful than killing him. Little bastard. I want you dead. Emperor Yan roared crazily. His hair flew in the wind and he spat out blood essence. He was burning his own blood essence. The burning blood essence merged into the seven-colored god-slaying smoke. He did not want to torture Chu Fengmian anymore. He wanted to kill Chu Fengmian. Only by killing Chu Fengmian now would he be able to vent his anger. As his blood essence burned, the seven-colored god-slaying smoke spewed out from his seven-colored gourd and started to spin. Any existence in the seven-colored god-slaying smoke would be crushed. What seven-colored god-slaying smoke? You are all trash. Old man, aren't you arrogant? Then I will destroy your cultivation base first. Let's see how arrogant you can be in the future. Chu Fengmian stood in the middle of the seven-colored god-slaying smoke, allowing the storm to wash over him. A cold smile appeared on his face. Chu Fengmian made his move. With a thought, the battle dragon's claw swept across the sky in front of Chu Fengmian. The seven-colored god-slaying smoke was swept away by the battle dragon's claw. All of it turned into ashes. Even the seven-colored gourd started to vibrate violently under this power. Then, it shattered. How is this possible? Master's seven-colored gourd was destroyed. How is this possible? Jian Zongqia's eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets when he saw this scene. The seven-colored gourd was a heaven-grade spiritual artifact. A heaven-grade spiritual artifact was destroyed just like that. However, what happened next shocked him even more. Chu Fengmian broke through the seven-colored god-slaying smoke. His body flashed continuously and in an instant, he was in front of Emperor Yan. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed him. Emperor Yan's neck was tightly gripped by Chu Fengmian. No matter how hard Emperor Yan struggled, he could not break free. How is this possible? The famous Emperor Yan was defeated just like that? The Gu family's patriarch and Gu Jin, who were standing at the side, were equally dumbfounded. Emperor Yan was the famous emperor of the Tianjin sect. He fought many people in the Tian sect and was very famous. The rainbow-colored gourd was even more difficult to deal with. Ordinary sovereigns would not dare to go against Emperor Yan. However, such a grand character had actually been defeated so miserably by Chu Fengmian. He had even been hung up and beaten by Chu Fengmian in the palm of his hand. Damn it! Damn it! Little bastard! Impossible! How can I be defeated by an ancestor? This is impossible! Emperor Yan was still struggling madly as Chu Fengmian grabbed his neck. He simply could not believe that he had been defeated by an ancestor. This was something that he had never imagined. I am invincible. Emperor, to chew to break chew to be, Emperor he chew. But in Chu Fengmian's eyes, this kind of struggle was futile and useless. You still want to struggle? Seems like you won't give up until I destroy your cultivation. Sky-devouring divine python, condense. Chu Fengmian pinched Emperor Yan. Suddenly, his mind moved. From Chu Fengmian's palm, a sky-devouring divine python condensed from sword intent. Under Chu Fengmian's control, the sky-devouring divine python drilled into Emperor Yan's body. It started to devour Emperor Yan's blood essence. Ah! 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 Emperor Yan screamed in agony. Extracting his blood essence like this was as painful as extracting his soul. What Emperor Yan could not accept was that his realm was getting lower and lower as his blood essence was drained. Heavenly Fate Realm. Heart-refining Realm. Soon, Emperor Yan's realm returned to life in Death Realm and Divine Power Realm. Finally, he became an ordinary person without any spiritual power. His body had also aged. In such a state, the Smoke Emperor would definitely die within a few days. Chu Fengmian had purposely left a few drops of blood essence for Emperor Yan. Otherwise, Emperor Yan would be dead by now. However, it was a little boring to let Emperor Yan die so quickly. Alright, you and your disciple should kneel down now. Chu Fengmian released Emperor Yan. Emperor Yan's body seemed to have fallen apart as he knelt down in front of Chu Fengmian. Jianwang had also lost his backing. He could no longer resist Chu Fengmian's power. At the same time, he knelt down in front of Chu Fengmian. After doing all this, the Gu clan's clan head and Gu Jin finally regained their senses. Everything that had happened was simply beyond their imagination, especially the Gu family head, who was already considered a powerhouse in the domain land. However, in front of an emperor, he could only kneel down like an ant. Looking at an emperor being crippled by Chu Fengmian and kneeling on the ground, he still felt like he was in a dream. After killing these two people, the Tianjian sect will definitely investigate. The Gu family head looked at the two people kneeling on the ground and said worriedly. Chu Fengmian wasn't afraid of the Tianjian sect, but he was. It doesn't matter. If the Tianjian sect comes to investigate, they will only know that I killed them. It has nothing to do with the Gu family. Chu Fengmian said casually. I will take them outside and kill them. This was also the reason why Chu Fengmian didn't kill them now. Jianwang and Emperor Yan had a high status in the Tianjian sect. Now that they were dead, the Tianjian sect would definitely investigate. With the Tianjian sect's methods, it wouldn't be difficult to reconstruct their deaths. Therefore, Chu Fengmian didn't kill them now. He was waiting for them to be taken outside and killed. This way, the Gu family wouldn't be implicated. After all, Chu Fengmian had already killed many Tianjian sect disciples. 2 more wouldn't make a difference. Thank you, young master. The Gu family head hurriedly expressed his gratitude. It's nothing. By the way, does the ancient city of Ningzhou have any emperor blood essence? Chu Fengmian waved his hand. He suddenly thought of something and asked. Emperor blood essence of a demon god is also available. If Chu Fengmian wanted the tree of God to grow, he would need a large amount of emperor blood essence. It would be troublesome for him to kill them alone. After all, emperors like Emperor Yan who came to die were in the minority. Most of the emperors were in the secret realms of the 7 sects. No matter how bold Chu Fengmian was, he couldn't go to the 7 sects to kill. There was another way to obtain emperor blood essence, and that was to buy it. Although emperor blood essence was extremely rare in the 9 zones, it wasn't impossible to buy it. For some martial artists, emperor blood essence was even more effective than heaven-level spirit pills. Chapter 938. Blood essence at the level of an emperor? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the head of the Gu family was shocked at first, then he quickly said. Most of the emperor's blood essence was left behind from the ancient times, and it's extremely rare in this era. Our Gu family only has 1 set. As for the big chambers of commerce in Ningzhou ancient city, there should be some left, but not many, and the price is extremely high. Even for the Gu family, the emperor's blood essence was a treasure that could only be found by chance. The Gu family had been passed down for countless years, and they only had one set of Emperor's blood essence, which was obtained by chance. Otherwise, they might not even have one set. Head of the Gu family, go and buy the Emperor's blood essence from all the chambers of commerce in Ningzhou ancient city. The price is not a problem, as long as they're willing to sell, buy them all. Chu Fengmian frowned. It seemed that the Emperor's blood essence was indeed extremely rare, and it was difficult to find a few sets in the entire Ningzhou ancient city. With the growth of the divine tree, 1 or 2 sets of Emperor's blood essence would not help the divine tree much. It would need at least 10 or even dozens of sets of Emperor's blood essence to make the divine tree grow again. However, even a mosquito's leg was meat. Since there was one, Chu Fengmian would not let it go. Chu Fengmian's mind moved, and a mountain of spirit stones appeared in front of him. What he lacked the least was wealth. Chu Fengmian could not even be bothered to calculate the price of these spiritual stones. He directly handed over all the spiritual stones that Chu Fengmian had condensed recently to the head of the Gu clan. Yes. The head of the Gu family had seen Chu Fengmian's shocking wealth before, and now that he saw Chu Fengmian's mountain of emperor-grade spirit stones, he was simply dumbfounded. All the chambers of commerce in Ningzhou ancient city might not even be able to match this amount of wealth. The head of the Gu family hurriedly put away all the spirit stones and left in a flash. It seems that if I want to buy the Emperor's blood essence, I'll have to go to a more prosperous city. However, the 9 Regions Genius Tournament is about to begin, so I don't have time to go to other places. Chu Fengmian sat on a chair, quietly drinking tea while thinking about what he would do next. The 9 Regions Genius Tournament would begin in 4 days, and Chu Fengmian did not have the energy to go to other places. This time, the 9 Regions Genius Tournament was unusual. Even someone like the Demon Emperor was planning to participate. Chu Fengmian also wanted to see what was different about this 9 Region Genius battle. Young Master, are you planning to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Gu Jin, who was serving Chu Fengmian, suddenly spoke. Gu Jin also wishes to accompany Young Master. Oh? You also want to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament? Chu Fengmian glanced at Gu Jin and smiled. Of course you can. With your current strength, as long as you don't encounter any monstrous geniuses in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, you won't be in any danger. Besides, you've just made a breakthrough, so you should participate in some battles to consolidate your cultivation. Thank you, Young Master. Gu Jin, who was at the side, repeatedly expressed his gratitude. While the two of them were talking, a crack suddenly appeared in the space of the palace. A figure came out from inside. It was the head of the Gu family. The head of the Gu clan held a few jade boxes in his hand and walked out of the spatial realm. The various chambers of commerce in Ningzhou ancient city have a total of 6 portions of Emperor blood essence. Including the Gu family's portion, there are 7 portions in total. Please take a look, Young Master. The head of the Gu family handed over the 7 jade boxes and said respectfully. Chu Fengmian waved his hand, and the 7 jade boxes were opened one by one. Balls of Emperor blood essence lay quietly inside. Many of these Emperor blood essences had been passed down from the ancient times. Tens of thousands of years had passed, but the power of the mask hadn't diminished. Moreover, there wasn't any smell of blood, only a faint fragrance. If there were no accidents, an Emperor blood essence could live for tens of thousands of years. Some powerful emperors could even live for tens of thousands of years. Their blood essence wouldn't be depleted even after tens of thousands of years. Only after 50,000 years, or even 100,000 years, would the spiritual power of the mask gradually dissipate. The spiritual power of these blood essences was at least 90% of its spiritual power. It was already considered good. Very good. Chu Fengmian sized it up and nodded with satisfaction. A vortex suddenly condensed in Chu Fengmian's palm and devoured the 7 portions of Emperor blood essences into the divine tree. After devouring 7 portions of Emperor blood essences in one go, even the divine tree couldn't devour them in one go. It could only slowly refine them. At least for half a month, the divine tree wouldn't need to devour the Emperor blood essences anymore. let's refine them slowly. I wonder if this divine tree can really grow to be as powerful as the one in the desolate ancient sect. Chu Fengmian looked at the divine tree devouring the emperor blood essences without any joy. He thought of the divine tree in the desolate ancient sect. It was so powerful and terrifying. If one day, the body in Chu Fengmian's body could also reach such a level, he would really be invincible. Even so, even if this divine tree was young, it still had great benefits for Chu Fengmian. Is there no emperor blood essence of a demon god in Ningzhou ancient city? Chu Fengmian suddenly asked. A demon god's blood essence contained more power than an emperor blood essence. In terms of bloodline power, how could a martial artist compare to a demon god? Since the divine tree could devour the emperor blood essence, Chu Fengmian also wanted to see if it could devour the emperor blood essence of a demon god. If it could, at least one portion of a demon god's blood essence would be more useful than 10 portions of emperor blood essence. An emperor blood essence of a demon god? This is something that only exists in legends. Our Ningzhou ancient city hasn't had an emperor blood essence of a demon god for at least 10,000 years. The patriarch of the Gu family explained. Even these emperor blood essences were accumulated over thousands of years. As for an emperor blood essence of a demon god, I've never seen one in my life. It seemed that the emperor blood essence of a demon god was countless times more difficult to find than an emperor blood essence. Hearing the patriarch of the Gu family's words, Chu Fengmian understood. There weren't many demon gods in the 9 regions, let alone an emperor blood essence of a demon god. It was said that most of the demon gods had gathered together. It wouldn't be easy to kill them and seize their blood essences. Therefore, even if there were some high-grade demon god blood essences, they were passed down from ancient times. Chapter 939. The only place where one can buy the blood essence of a demon god at the emperor level should be the city of 1,000 merchants. The Gu clan leader suddenly thought of something and said. It's said that there are auctions in the city of 1,000 merchants that sell emperor-level monster god blood essence. The city of 1,000 merchants. Chu Fengmian wasn't unfamiliar with this name. In terms of the most flourishing city in the 9 regions, it was surely the city of 1,000 merchants, and there was no suspense. Countless chambers of commerce in the 9 regions were based in the city of 1,000 merchants. Indeed, the only place where one could buy emperor-level monster god blood essence was the city of 1,000 merchants. The city of 1,000 merchants was in the opposite direction from the ancient gladiator arena. He could only participate in the 9 regions genius tournament before going to the city of 1,000 merchants. Chu Fengmian already had a plan. The most important thing was to participate in the 9 regions genius tournament. Chu Fengmian came to the domain for the 9 regions genius tournament. It's time to set off. Chu Fengmian finished his tea and slowly stood up. I'm going to the ancient gladiator arena. I need to borrow the teleportation formation in the ancient city of Ning province. No problem. The young master asked me to follow. The Gu clan leader led the way and Chu Fengmian quickly arrived in front of a teleportation formation. The ancient city of Ning province wasn't huge in the domain, but it was an ancient city. That was why there were teleportation formations that led to various cities. Father, I also want to follow the young master to participate in the 9 regions genius tournament. Gu Jin said to the head of the Gu family from the side. Jin, you want to go too? The Gu clan leader was slightly surprised and then asked. All right. With your current strength, it's indeed time for you to go out and gain experience. If you encounter any danger, you can tell me through the Jade Talisman. Chu Fengmian condensed a Jade Talisman from his palm and handed it to the Gu clan leader. Since he wanted the Gu clan leader to work for him, he naturally had to give him some benefits. Moreover, this Jade Talisman could be used to monitor the Gu clan leader at any time to see if he was disloyal. You can use the rest of the wealth to manage. I need a large amount of Emperor-level blood essence. You can help me collect it. I'll come back after the 9 regions genius tournament. After saying all this, Chu Fengmian slowly stood up and stepped into the teleportation array. Gu Jin followed behind Chu Fengmian and stepped into the teleportation portal. Yes, young master. I will manage it well and wait for young master's return. The head of the Gu clan said respectfully as he opened the teleportation portal. Chu Fengmian and Gu Jin disappeared from the ancient city of Ning province. From the teleportation array, he began to cross over continuously. Before long, Chu Fengmian felt dizzy. In front of him was a completely unfamiliar city. Young master, we're here. This is the ancient battle arena. Gu Jin said. Speaking of Chu Fengmian, it wasn't her first time here. Although she hadn't participated in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, she had watched it many times. Such a grand event was enough to attract countless cultivators from all over the 9 regions. Thus, Gu Jinqi and Chu Fengmian were much more familiar with it. Chu Fengmian brought Gu Jin here because he considered Gu Jin's familiarity with the region, which was why he brought her here. It was much more convenient for Chu Fengmian to bring Gu Jin along by himself. However, the ancient gladiator arena was different from what Chu Fengmian had imagined. In his imagination, the ancient gladiator arena should be an extremely desolate place. However, at a glance, this place should be in the land of a city that was several times larger than Ning province's ancient city. Countless cultivators were walking through the city. It was a hubbub of voices. It was definitely more prosperous than the ancient city of desolation. Even many of the martial artists on the road could be considered as geniuses in their own right. Now that the 9 Regions Genius Tournament had begun, it was enough to attract countless geniuses from all over the 9 regions. There were geniuses everywhere. Even Chu Fengmian couldn't help but be surprised. Gu Jin calmly explained when she saw the surprise in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Young master, this isn't the ancient battle arena. It's the martial imperial city. The ancient battle arena only opens the day before the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Cultivators only need to go through the teleportation array in the martial imperial city to enter. We're a few days early. We can find an inn to rest and recover our energy before participating in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Now that we're here early, there should be some rooms available. If we wait another day, we might not be able to find any. Chu Fengmian nodded after hearing Gu Jin's words. 4 days was a short period of time for a cultivator at Chu Fengmian's level. However, it would be too embarrassing to sleep on the streets. Let's find an inn first. Chu Fengmian looked at the martial imperial city. It was his first time coming to the martial imperial city. Originally, Chu Fengmian wanted to walk around. However, after hearing Gu Jin's words, he decided to find an inn first. Chu Fengmian and Gu Jin slowly walked around the martial imperial city. Suddenly, they saw a huge pavilion in front of them. It was dozens of floors high. It towered into the sky and had an extraordinary aura. The words Sky-Reaching Pavilion were engraved on its surface. Sky-Reaching Pavilion. Chu Fengmian remembered that Sky-Reaching Pavilion was the property of Sky-Reaching Pavilion. Sky-Reaching Pavilion could be considered one of the biggest chambers of commerce in the entire 9 regions. As for the Sky Tower, it was an inn owned by the Sky Tower. It was said that the Sky Tower was not only a place to cultivate, it was also a place where one could buy and sell spirit medicines, spirit weapons, information, and even live humans. Of course, one had to pay a sufficient amount of wealth. Sky-Reaching Pavilion was extremely expensive. One had to be at least a life and death realm cultivator to afford it. Otherwise, ordinary cultivators wouldn't even be able to afford it for a day. The price for a day's stay would be at least several king-grade spirit stones, or even higher. However, Chu Fengmian didn't care about wealth at all. Let's go. We'll stay in Sky-Reaching Pavilion. Chu Fengmian stepped into Sky-Reaching Pavilion. Seeing Chu Fengmian enter, several women immediately came to welcome him. These women were all saints in the divine force realm. In some small sects, they could be considered experts. If they were in a remote place like Wuxing Nation, they could even establish their own sect. Chapter 940. Most of the martial artists who could stay in Sky-Reaching Pavilion were life and death experts. Therefore, the people serving them couldn't be too weak. Seeing Chu Fengmian and Gu Jin walk in, these women hurriedly welcomed them. These women's strength was ordinary, but their appearances were top-notch. Although they couldn't compare to Gu Jin, they were still pleasing to the eyes. "Seniors, are you here to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Battle?" A young woman took the initiative to speak. "The 9 Regions Genius Battle will start in 4 days. Our Sky-Reaching Pavilion's rooms have arrays that connect to the underground spirit veins. They're rich in spirit energy and can be used for your cultivation." Chu Fengmian nodded after hearing the woman's words. "Give me 2 heaven-grade rooms." Chu Fengmian had stayed in Sky-Reaching Pavilion in his previous life. Sky-Reaching Pavilion's rooms were divided into Heaven, Earth, Profound, and Yellow grades. Although the lowest grade Yellow grade rooms were much better than the other inns, Chu Fengmian didn't lack wealth and naturally wanted to enjoy the best. Moreover, Sky-Reaching Pavilion's rooms had special arrays that could purify spirit energy. The higher the grade of the room, the better the effect of cultivation. "Senior, are you planning to stay in a heaven grade room?" The woman was a little surprised, but she quickly reacted. "We still have 2 heaven rank rooms left in the Sky-Reaching Pavilion. However, it costs 5 royal grade spirit stones a day to use a heaven rank room. The price of a heaven tier room was 5 royal tier spirit stones a day. Even the old ancestors would not be able to afford it. It could be said that those who could afford a heaven grade room were either geniuses of the 7 great sects or emperors. Otherwise, they couldn't afford such a price." However, to Chu Fengmian, this amount of spirit stones was simply a drop in the ocean. Chu Fengmian's mind moved, condensing 40 emperor-grade spirit stones in front of him and flying them out. 2 heaven-grade rooms. "Yes, I'll arrange it." The woman received the 40 emperor-grade spirit stones and hurriedly went to arrange it. Before leaving, she couldn't help but look at Chu Fengmian a few more times. She was secretly thinking about how to get closer to Chu Fengmian and curry favor with him. Those who could afford a heaven-grade room in Sky-Reaching Pavilion were definitely famous figures in the region. Even the slightest bit of benefit would be more than what these saints had accumulated in their entire lives. Chu Fengmian didn't think much of it when he saw what she was thinking. These people didn't have high aptitudes, and they had chosen to come to Sky-Piercing Tower for the sake of wealth. If they met some experts, they would take them back to marry and take them as concubines. It would be their good fortune. Chu Fengmian didn't have such thoughts. Although these women were good-looking, they still couldn't enter Chu Fengmian's eyes. As long as she worked obediently, Chu Fengmian could reward her with some wealth. "Senior, it's done. Please follow me." The woman quickly returned with 2 jade talismans in her hands. The word heaven was engraved on each of the jade talismans. It seemed to be the spirit talisman of this heavenly tower. Chu Fengmian had just stood up. 5 martial artists, 3 men and 2 women, suddenly walked in from outside Clear Sky Tower. The auras of these 5 warriors were extremely terrifying. The weakest of them was at the 5th step of the life and death steps, the divine martial realm. The remaining 4 were all at the 6th step of the life and death steps, the heart-refining realm. Moreover, the aura of each of them was much stronger than that of other martial artists at the same level. The arrival of this group of people attracted the attention of all the martial artists in Clear Sky Tower. This group of trash overestimated themselves. They all came to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Battle. The martial Imperial City is going to be crowded to death. One of the men walked up to Heavenly Tower. When he saw that the hall was filled with people, he spoke with dissatisfaction. His words caused many cultivators in the hall to show anger on their faces. The martial artists who dared to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Battle were all famous geniuses. Who didn't have some pride? However, when these warriors saw the martial god statue on the back of the man's clothes, the anger in their hearts was forcefully suppressed. Wearing the martial god statue, he was a disciple of the sage monarch sect. Even if they were arrogant, they didn't dare to compete with the disciples of the 7 great sections. They hurriedly looked away, not daring to look again. Humph, a group of trash. The man from the Sage Monarch sect saw the reaction of the surrounding martial artists, and the arrogance on his face became thicker. He proudly pointed at the receptionists. "What are you doing? Hurry up and find 2 heaven-grade rooms. Seniors, the heaven-grade rooms are full." A receptionist hurriedly walked over and cautiously asked. "What? They're full?" The man from the Sage Monarch sect showed some dissatisfaction. "It seems that there are no more rooms. Let's go to another place," a female disciple from the Sage Monarch sect said. "Another place?" The man from the Sage Monarch sect's eyes flashed as he looked around the hall. Suddenly, his gaze fell on Chu Fengmian. He didn't look at Chu Fengmian, but at the 2 jade talismans in the hands of the receptionist beside Chu Fengmian. "Wait here. I'll go back," the man from the Sage Monarch sect said as he walked towards Chu Fengmian. In a few steps, he arrived in front of Chu Fengmian. "Boy, are these 2 heaven-grade rooms yours? Hand them over." The man from the Sage Monarch sect looked at Chu Fengmian. When he saw that Chu Fengmian was in the divine martial realm, his eyes were filled with disdain. "You can go to another room." His words were extremely overbearing, as if he was giving an order to Chu Fengmian. Oh no! This boy is being targeted by the Sage Monarch sect. The people from the Sage Monarch sect are all arrogant. Looks like this boy is going to suffer. But this guy can afford to stay in a heaven-grade room. He should be someone with some status. So what? Even if he has some status, he can't compete with the 7 major sections. The martial artists looked at Chu Fengmian and started to discuss. Hearing the discussion, the man from the Sage Monarch sect looked even more proud. However, when he saw that Chu Fengmian didn't reply, his eyes turned cold. "Boy, I'm talking to you. Can't you hear me? Oh right, here's a royal grade spirit stone. Quickly give up your room. Here's a royal grade spirit stone as compensation. Get out of my sight." The man from the Sage Monarch sect suddenly took out a royal grade spirit stone and threw it at Chu Fengmian as if he was giving alms. A royal grade spirit stone couldn't even afford to stay in a heaven grade room. Chapter 941. Get lost. Chu Fengmian looked at the man from the Saint King sect and his eyes flashed. He waved his hand and the royal grade spiritual stone was smashed into smithereens. It seemed that Chu Fengmian could not live in peace. More and more people were courting death. "Boy, how dare you break my spiritual stone?" Seeing that Chu Fengmian did not take the spiritual stone and instead smashed it, the man from the Holy King sect was furious. "It seems that you don't know who we are. Let me tell you, boy, we are from the Holy King sect. We are here on behalf of the Holy King sect. Why? Do you want to be our enemy?" The man from the Holy King sect looked at Chu Fengmian and said arrogantly. "Kneel down now and hand over the 2 heaven-level rooms. Then we will forgive your sins. Otherwise, no matter who you are, you will be hunted down by the Holy King sect." Senior. The girl standing beside Chu Fengmian trembled when she heard the man from the Holy King sect. The Holy King sect was a colossus that she could not afford to offend. She was in a dilemma. "Oh? Hunted down by the Holy King sect? You are just a disciple of the Holy King sect. Who do you think you are? How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me? Are you going to get lost, or do you want me to throw you out?" Chu Fengmian laughed when he saw the man's threat. It seemed that among the 7 sects, the Sage Monarch sect was the most arrogant. In the eastern region, the Sage Monarch sect was the absolute ruler. That was why all the disciples of the Sage Monarch sect were so arrogant. Chu Fengmian could not care less about the arrogance of the Holy King sect disciples. However, if they dared to be arrogant in front of him, they were courting death. "What? You want me to get lost? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the man from the Holy King sect laughed crazily as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Boy, who do you think you are? How dare you speak so arrogantly? It seems that I, Wu Kuang, have been in the eastern region for too long. How dare you challenge me? Wu Kuang. He is the disciple of a grand elder of the Holy King sect. He used to be the top of the list of top 100 talents in the eastern region. It's that fierce man. Hearing the name Wu Kuang, some martial artists realized the identity of the man in front of them. Wu Kuang. Number 1 on the list of top 100 talents in the eastern region? I've never heard of it. I'll give you 3 more seconds to scram. Chu Fengmian said coldly. Fine, fine. Brat, you're courting death, so don't blame me. Scram. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Wu Kuang could no longer hold himself back and suddenly attacked. From his body, spiritual power rose crazily, and martial arts condensed in his body. Suddenly, he grabbed at Chu Fengmian. It went straight for Chu Fengmian's chest. The power contained in this claw was extremely vicious. If anyone was caught by this claw, even if they didn't die, they would be seriously injured. His first move was so ruthless. How ruthless! This brat is going to suffer. If he had known earlier, he would have handed over the room obediently. Many surrounding warriors sighed and shook their heads as they looked at Chu Fengmian. The 9 zones had always revered martial arts, and the only thing that mattered was strength. Die, brat! Wu Kuang's face was ferocious. As he roared, his claw was already close to Chu Fengmian's chest. But the moment his claw was close to Chu Fengmian's chest, it suddenly stopped, unable to move forward. Chu Fengmian suddenly attacked and grabbed Wu Kuang's wrist tightly, making it impossible for Wu Kuang's hand to move. What? Wu Kuang was stopped. Seeing Wu Kuang's hand being held by Chu Fengmian, the surrounding warriors were in disbelief, their eyes wide open. They had all heard of Wu Kuang's strength. He was ranked first on the list of top 100 talents in the eastern region. Among the geniuses of the 7 sects, he was considered a top figure. In their opinion, with Wu Kuang's attack, even if Chu Fengmian didn't die, he would be seriously injured. As for Chu Fengmian being able to withstand it, it was not within their expectations. Oh? The other Sage King sect disciples looked at Chu Fengmian with slight surprise. They didn't expect this either. After being arrogant for so long, is this all you've got? Since you won't scram, I'll make you scram. Chu Fengmian sneered, and his hands suddenly tightened. Wu Kuang's body was suddenly lifted up and thrown out of the sky-connecting tower. Boom! Outside sky-reaching tower, there were still many warriors watching the show, but suddenly, they all hurriedly dispersed. Wu Kuang's body was thrown out of sky-reaching tower, and he took a few steps back before stabilizing himself. What's going on? What happened? Someone was thrown out of sky-reaching tower? In Martial Imperial City, many warriors saw the commotion and gathered around to watch the show. This is Wu Kuang. Wu Kuang was thrown out. Some of the more knowledgeable warriors recognized Wu Kuang at a glance, and their eyes were filled with surprise. As a genius of the 7 sects, Wu Kuang was actually thrown out. Although this was not enough to hurt Wu Kuang's nerves and bones, these discussions caused his expression to turn ugly. As a genius of the 7 sects, when had he ever suffered such humiliation? Damn it! Kid, looks like I've underestimated you. Wu Kuang looked at Chu Fengmian with a ferocious expression, and his eyes were filled with endless killing intent. He was extremely angry. Boom! Behind Wu Kuang, the shadow of a martial god slowly condensed, and then the martial god's shadow merged with Wu Kuang's body. It looked as if he was the martial god himself. Spiritual power burst forth from his body, forcing the surrounding crowd to disperse. Stop, no fighting in sky-reaching tower. At this moment, a few figures suddenly appeared, and they were the stewards of sky-reaching tower. They felt the fluctuation of sky-reaching tower's spiritual energy and rushed over, wanting to stop the fight. "Get out of my way, a bunch of trash. How dare you stop me?" Wu Kuang glanced at the stewards of sky-piercing tower. Suddenly, his spiritual energy erupted and he sent a palm strike towards them. Slap! The stewards of sky-connecting tower were all patriarchs in the heart-tempering realm. However, their auras were far inferior to Wu Kuang's. Chapter 942. The steward of sky-reaching tower was sent flying by the slap. His expression was ugly. The strength of these stewards was far from comparable to a true expert. Generally speaking, as long as one revealed their identity, most martial artists would show some respect to sky-reaching tower. However, Wu Kuang did not care and sent the steward flying with a slap. This slap caused the other stewards of the Heavenspan Pavilion to retreat one after another. Wu Kuang was a genius with an extremely high status in the Sage Monarch sect. How could he endure such humiliation? He did not even care about sky-reaching tower. What should we do? We can't stop Wu Kuang. Quickly report this to the great venerables. The stewards hurriedly began to discuss. No matter what, this was a conflict in sky-reaching tower. They had to be responsible for it. Brat, you have completely enraged me. No matter who you are or what your identity is, you must die today. Kneel down and accept your death. Wu Kuang took a step forward and his aura surged crazily. This aura was completely different from before. The martial god's shadow condensed behind his back and merged with his body. Martial god true body. This is the secret technique of the Sage Monarch sect. Martial god true body. Gu Jin, who was standing beside Chu Fengmian, quickly reminded him. The martial god true body was the secret technique of the Sage Monarch sect. Now that Wu Kuang had used it without any hesitation, it was enough to show how angry he was. He was willing to sacrifice everything to kill Chu Fengmian. The martial artists standing in the lobby of sky-reaching tower retreated. They knew how terrifying the martial god true body was. Anyone who was affected by it would lose a layer of skin even if they did not die. Invincible. Wu Kuang took a step forward and rushed in front of Chu Fengmian. Suddenly, he threw a punch. A terrifying force swept through the entire lobby of sky-reaching tower, trying to engulf everyone. Chu Fengmian stood in place and watched Wu Kuang's punch coming. He did not even move. He had no intention of dodging. What is this brat trying to do? He's not dodging. Is he crazy? Seeing Chu Fengmian's actions, the surrounding warriors didn't understand what Chu Fengmian was trying to do. If he didn't block such a terrifying punch, it would be no different from courting death. But in the next moment, countless warriors' eyes were filled with shock. Chu Fengmian slowly moved when the fist was about to hit him. He also clenched his fist and punched out. Meet force with force. He chose to fight with the Sage Monarch sect disciples. The most powerful thing about the disciples of the Holy King sect was their physical strength. The true body of the martial god had merged with the supreme martial path to create an extremely powerful body. This was the true essence of the martial god true body. But now, Chu Fengmian actually chose to take it head-on. Invincible in the world? What a boastful claim. Chu Fengmian let out a hearty laugh as he threw out a punch. Two fist winds suddenly collided in the air. These fist winds caused many of the surrounding warriors to be sent flying. Even some of the patriarchs wouldn't be able to withstand the shockwaves from the collision, let alone the heart of the collision. Who's the winner? All eyes were on the heart of the collision. They were all looking forward to the result of the collision. In the next moment, a figure flew out from the heart of the collision. This figure wasn't Chu Fengmian, but Wu Kuang. Wu Kuang flew out and crashed into a wall. Only then did his body stop. The crowd noticed that Wu Kuang's body was filled with countless tiny cracks. Although these cracks were small, they couldn't escape the eyes of the warriors. The true body of the martial god has been shattered. Wu Kuang's true body of the martial god has been shattered by a single punch. Oh my god! What kind of power is this? The true body of the martial god of the Holy King sect disciples was as tough as a spiritual weapon. Wu Kuang was a genius among the Holy King sect disciples. His body was almost as tough as a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. But now, a single punch from Chu Fengmian had caused his true body of the martial god to crack. A single punch was enough to shatter a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. What kind of power was this? This was a power that only an emperor could possess. Wu Kuang! The remaining 4 Holy King sect disciples hurried over. When they saw Wu Kuang's shattered true body of the martial god, their faces darkened. The true body of the Holy King sect's true body of the Holy King sect could be said to be the foundation of their strength. It was also their trump card. Once it was shattered, they would have to pay a hefty price to recover it. Your Excellency, you've gone too far. One of the Holy King sect disciples looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. Too far? If it weren't for Heavenspan Tower's face, I would have killed him already. Chu Fengmian laughed and pointed at the disciples of the Sage Monarch sect. Get lost. If you don't, you'll end up like trash. You! Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the Holy King sect disciples' faces turned green and red. They were the Holy King sect disciples and had never been scolded like this before. It was a great humiliation indeed. The disciples of the Sage Monarch sect, no matter where they were in the 9 zones, were respected and respected. Being pointed at and scolded like this was something that had never happened before. When the Sage Monarch sect disciples heard Chu Fengmian's words, they could not wait to rush over and fight him to the death. But no one dared to. Wu Kuang had been defeated by Chu Fengmian in a single move. Their strength was on par with Wu Kuang's at best. Fighting with Chu Fengmian was no different from courting death. Good. We'll remember your words today. When the 9 regions genius battle comes, you'll die. A Holy King sect disciple shouted at Chu Fengmian. Finally, he turned his head and said reluctantly. Let's go. The Sage King sect disciples did not even look back as they left. Ridiculous. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a disdainful smile. The last words of the Sage Monarch sect disciples were just trying to save face. In Chu Fengmian's eyes, these guys were like ants. The outcome of the 9 regions genius battle would be the same in a few days. These Holy King sect disciples were nothing in Chu Fengmian's eyes. If not for the fact that they were in Sky-Reaching Tower, which was a sensitive place, their every move would be monitored by countless people. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.